All right, we're recording now for Dark Heart, episode 5. This is Pacifica Divine, Devin Guerrero. I've got, let's see, who's going first here? I don't know. We've got Cynthia up first. Yeah, girl. Tell me who you
are. Okay, so I'm Cynthia. Friends and family also call me Marcy. I really like both. At first I didn't like Marcy, but over time it started to sound like merci, which means thank you in French, and kind of kept it because it made me feel really grateful for life, people, experiences like this that kind of keep me moving forward.
Like it.
I am Daniel. You can see me if I kind of go in. But I don't really go by nicknames, but people call me Post Malone all the fucking time at work. Oh, and D. People call me D. I don't think anyone calls me D.
Except for me.
Some people call you D. I dig it. That's cool.
Well, I guess I have nicknames.
They call me Debbie in the kitchen. They don't pronounce I didn't make that up. I didn't make that up. It's hard to say, I guess.
That's the thing is everyone in the kitchen calls me Danny, and it's like it's a Hispanic thing. Like everyone in my family that's Mexican, they all call me Danny. Just because.
So it's just, okay, I see.
Yeah, it's cultural, I guess.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, but Post Malone is the one thing that everyone fucking knows at this restaurant.
I didn't even hear that. I'm not in the loop.
It's so pretty prominent.
Yeah, like, basically, like I have guests stopping me all the fucking time, telling me, like, in the middle of me doing things, they're like, "Do people call you Post Malone?" And I'm like, "Yes." When I was at the front desk, they called me Host Malone, like just to make them laugh and like whatever. But yeah, it's a thing. Anyways, my name's Daniel. I work at the Cheesecake Factory, and so do we all.
Yeah, we all do. That's kind of going to be a recurring theme, I think, for the first few dozen podcasts that I'm going to have coworkers on, because they're a strange, interesting group of individuals that kind of come together, and because we share it all in the shit together, we're all kind of a really interesting family.
Soldiers. We're all soldiers.
Well, if we want to take it that far.
We're braver than the Marines. No, just kidding.
Don't say that. Don't say that. We feed the Marines.
Hey,
we feed America.
Well, it's just a meme on the
internet. We see an interesting cross slice of America at our store in particular. And I think we have a popular brand that sees a lot of action across the country.
And it attracts a lot of
a lot of interesting people. I can say that even in Huntington Beach.
People come to it with expectations, and that's when you get to gauge what kind of people they are, is when they have expectations.
Exactly. Now, we got into this discussion, I think, last podcast, and then especially we hovered on it in the third podcast with Ivan. We talked about how we're most capable people in our positions, if we're conscious of it, to kind of read people. Like, we're kind of in a good spot, I think, to understand.
I completely agreed with that.
Ourselves, because we're able to understand other people. And I know that a lot of people at our store in particular, I see kind of like their maturing is different than other people. There's something kind of unlocking in each of you, because I think that you deal with so much stress that it's building up something inside, a kind of a greater understanding, not just of the world around you, but then reflectively, or internally rather, in yourself. Like, for example, we keep bringing up in this podcast as a future guest, Dave Edpow. If you go, and see, there you go. Everyone's response is, everyone does that when his name comes up.
It's because he's the best.
He is the best. Like, $1 million man, Dave Edpow.
I reserve my spot on the podcast with him. He and I need to talk.
The podcast with Dave is gonna include Matt as a guarantee, because we're going in for the Urban Decay project down in Skid Row. And that's a big thing. But I'd love to have, because I'd make 4 if you joined in.
Yeah, but I mean, I prefer to keep it tight. So
no, that would work out.
If it's me and Dave and you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to have Dave in again. I just, with his schedule, he seems to be available only so often. Ethan's supposed to come on Monday with Andrew, who has the Film Phantom channel on YouTube.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, that's really enjoyable. I need to talk to him about.
I support him.
One of his.
Yeah, I was
top. What is that about?
Worst 5, yeah.
Oh, what was his top worst 5?
No. I'm just. I want to talk to him about one part because it's fascinating. I want to flesh it out.
I
see, his reviews are, they're YouTube material, and that's no hate, but it's the type of material that is, I wouldn't say standard, but it's. You find it on YouTube.
It fits.
Exactly. It fits the standard format for YouTube. You know, it's minutes long, entertainment. It can give you in-depth looks, like very briefly, but it's not a deep dive. But, he can still relate from having dived deep himself.
Yeah.
I think the podcast format would allow us to talk more deeply about things he might want to talk about. And then we could also discuss some of the counterpoints, maybe.
I do respond really well to other film podcasts because they get to kind of go into detail with why they like certain things and why they don't like certain things.
Also, I'd love, as a film critic, I'd love for him to dive into, like, I wouldn't say the stuff he reviews is not meaty, but I mean, like, art films.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm big on, like, work by Aaron Aronofsky, and I was really big on
Aaron Aronofsky, wow.
The Fountain.
Okay,
that was a great
piece. Directed, because I remember his name.
Requiem for a Dream is a
Requiem for a Dream.
You only need to see that once.
No, I've seen it twice, and every time I'm just like, all right, now I have to live life again.
Yeah, there's some stories.
It ends with like a surgery scene where
there's plenty of stuff.
There's a lot of stuff in that.
There's a lot of good stuff.
Real intense.
It might be worth seeing.
Got it.
Yeah,
that's my favorite part of it. I mean, we can dive into it, but Requiem for a Dream is the fact that his mom gets addicted to like diet pills and stuff. It's such like an honest, like, oh, she's such a nice lady, and she falls victim to pharmaceutical addiction, and it's just like some real shit right there, man.
Isn't that a story that
it strikes where you least expect it?
Right now, especially like, don't we need graphic content to shock us the hell out of our stupor in America?
I think that's like super interesting, just because like I'm extremely fascinated by how the images around us affect and influence the way in which we view ourselves, and like just to kind of hear you guys kind of unveil the way that like a film kind of made you see something different and shock you into a completely different state of mind. That's just kind of like
it definitely affected my view of pharmaceuticals. I was like, I don't want to be
involved with that.
A little bit, yeah. Well, it paints it in a very specific light where it's like she's going crazy.
I grew up in an area where like, if you were like an alternate kind of personality, an aberrant type, like you could very often be the kind of kid that got, his parents to get you prescribed pills. And then your personality changed, and I wasn't into that.
On a physical level, into that. Yeah. And I have friends the same way, where they immediately were prescribed things, and I was like, when
you get to the high school level, so it's that's what my folks tried to do to me, and I was not into that.
You abstained, right?
Yeah, because I saw the effects. It wasn't in media for me yet. I got no media up to a point, and then I got a fair amount of media, like cable TV, and then I kind of fell off taking in media. And I think that's a large reason why I'm not as steeped in so much social media as other people, why I don't really check my phone a whole bunch. I'm like the only person in that store that turns my phone off and puts it in my backpack when I clock in.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, no,
keep it on me, but I actively like make the decision not to check it. It's like a thing for me.
I can't check my phone for the life of me just because of my like luck with technology. It just genuinely doesn't work when I most need it to, and this has been like a reoccurring problem since like the moment I got my first phone. And like I swear on my life, I do my best to take care of everything that I've got, but there's just something about technology in me that the second that I touch it, it just stops working. I even got the nickname in high school, Mata iPads, because there was a time when I touched my iPad in front of my teacher, and it was right before a presentation. He saw the presentation on my iPad, and the iPad just completely turned off and it stopped working. I touched another student's and it just stopped working. It was bad.
You got electric fingertips.
It was really bad. Yeah.
Just gotta stop shocking people.
That's interesting. Like in the way that some people are used, you might say empathic, or they're consent energy, consent vibes. Who ever knows what the hell that is? But if you ever met someone who kind of does that, right?
Yeah,
they're
that's
highly
what I love
sensitive
about
people,
right?
right?
I feel like that's the type.
Exactly. You can be a lot of people land in our industry for one, and then you notice people who are like really highly attuned. And sometimes you might hear they believe in ghosts and spirits, because I feel like that type falls into those belief patterns, because they're sensitive to anxious thoughts.
To a lot of things that aren't,
I think that's what it is. They're prone to anxious thoughts, which your mind is running, which allows you to digest all the stress we probably all deal with. But
I mean,
do you consider yourself an empath?
Yeah. I used to be.
How would you define that? How about that?
Okay. So
I haven't been able to define it for myself. I've been hearing a lot of other people describe it, and I can relate to the way that they unveil what an empath would be. But I also can't. I still haven't been able to identify myself entirely as one.
Okay. I think in this sense, and because I'm no expert on the science of this type of person. I think it's just the type of person we're talking about. But it does seem like there's various types that kind of, they seem to be more obvious than others sometimes. Who like the kind that fall into the restaurant server role, who become more stressed. They're able to kind of take it. Generally, they're the kind that are internalized to begin with. They're an introvert usually. But this person seems to be just more highly attuned to other people, their moods, their energy, and they're able to also then move people with their mood and energy, right? They have an understanding of people and their energy. Like, I bet if you got really good, you could probably move crowds. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and I do understand exactly what you're saying with that, because I do think that somebody's mood and energy can totally like affect somebody else's, you know, and lift you up in the same way where you, if you watch a certain film or if you watch a certain kind of story and that plot leads you to this like state of mind that's a positive one, I do genuinely believe that your mind is trying to follow that narrative, and once it gets you there, it's kind of priming it to be able to reach that sense of happiness, or like that state of bliss, I guess, that film or that story line was trying to emanate from like the get-go. The same way that I guess an empath in person could be that embodiment of that feeling, and hence be able to move you into their direction just because of their ability to understand how your narrative is lacking what they have and what you're needing.
So it's like a beneficial public figure. Let's say if they were trying to do some sort of good. You know, and you see maybe some celebrities have kind of like a built-in notoriety that seems to make them just, you know, like, holy crap, that's so-and-so, right? And so let's say they're into all these philanthropic things, and let's say like they apparently really come off like a legit person. They even sign shit, and they're not a dick in public. Like, maybe they're pretty actually good. And so you might like credit the, you know, the whatever health tips and advice and philosophy they throw out on their Instagram and shit, you know? So you might start following that as a role model. Like, you know, like, check this person out, they got it up.
And I do think that a lot of the times the people that we look up to are the people who like have values, or like they're in places in their lives that like that we admire. Okay, I guess I better rephrase that. They're in a place and they're in a state in their life that we admire for our own selves, and then we just kind of would like something similar. But I think that a lot of them start to like have to like unveil the things that they've come to value in order for us to want to latch on to what they are doing. Because if we don't value what they're valuing, then what's going to keep us following?
I think the whole being able to read people really comes into play there, because if they don't unveil what they value, you won't really understand what people feel like they lack. And I feel like someone who is an empath would definitely, part of that being is they can read what people feel like they lack and then give from within. Because I feel like people who are empathic have an overabundance from within that they are able to give to people and kind of help them feel that with their lacking, because they are able to, you know, generously give some of that positive energy that they can tell other people aren't quite having.
Now, I want to say that this sounds kind of like a lot of probably practitioners of various spiritual practices, or maybe early faiths, religions even. And of course, there's various human beings who fall into these roles, which are in structured systems. So, you know, like someone who may not, like, really in their heart be a believer becomes a priest, right? You know, like that happens, right? Okay, well, let's say, for example, that's like how the earliest religions probably functioned, that natural empaths, let's say, for example, like our own society, introverts kind of end up, let's say, classic example, wallflower, right? But yet the lone girl gets a lot of attention from a lot of specific types of dudes, right? So that works out in a strange way. But just people tend to become isolated by their nature and disposition. Okay.
Disposition.
And their environment and how.
And so in that way, I want to say that they become wired to fall into these roles that then serve society anyways, right? So I mean, like you might be an aberrant type that doesn't fit in your whole life. Well, okay, we figure out that, you know, in your adolescence, you're going to probably fit into the next shaman role. All right, so yeah, you're the aberrant, antisocial, doesn't fit with the communal tribal nature. You're going to go live off in the hut with the older dude who's, you know, like, and you're going to learn from him. And
I feel like that shaman role has just basically translated into therapists or whatever that form takes. There's a lot of different forms for someone to be a caretaker for other people now.
And I think the role is kind of, it's interesting how I think people naturally fall into this, and then others, I think, for survival, take on a role at the same time.
They shoulder
and that is something that I really want to get into with Edson. There's this idea that's gone over in one of Nietzsche's works, the aesthetic ideal, and how one can essentially use an aesthetic ideal to kind of become something entirely else in order to survive, in order to throw off a physiological fatigue, devolution, and the degradation of society. Your family's been here too long. You're so many generations not going anywhere. You when you're born, maybe you grew up in abundance, so maybe you have a life of ease. You are the least prepared for your world to fall out from under you. And yet across America, factories are cold, roads and bridges are old, there's no jobs. Like, that's what America is waking up to, that the country moved on decades ago and you guys just stuck around. Right? Like, that's the reality.
Those industries are becoming minimal at this point, and they're flourishing in other directions.
Those people are all products and descendants of systems that are no longer functioning.
Like industrialization.
Yeah. I mean, those evolve and move on, and people have always needed to evolve and move on. It's just these people had enough to not have to move on. Do you see that? Like, America was plentiful enough that they never had to struggle. And not struggling, now they spent their middle age and old age falling apart instead. Whereas I feel like, let's say, for example, if you live, let's say, in a tribal setting with like 13 kids, your 2 wives maybe in a hut, you're probably more happy than most people in America. Happy.
Just because you're
how you're living, how you're life is so different. And here it's just a long slide into falling apart.
Comparison is the thief of joy in our country, so everyone's constantly comparing. But I feel like the need to move on is definitely the inherent structural flaw with like something like conservatism and wanting things to be the way they were before, because it's like, this river is flowing forward and it does not go backwards. We not need to constantly go forward and
I think one of my Instagram posts was a Nietzsche quote from maybe the Gay Science. About
one of my favorites.
Old power that becomes old becomes atavistic, and new power naturally rises to overthrow.
Yes, exactly.
That it's a natural process.
It's the structure of power
all across time. It's not that history repeats itself. It's a natural process of not progressive or liberal forces, of just natures against other natures. People really forget that. And that these two sides, these natures of human beings, are what spawn the systems of the right, of conservatism, of traditionalism, okay? There's a nature. It's not conservative people and tradition. No. It's not that. That's just a cover over what lies beneath, which is a natural drive of the human race. That it's a large nature to resist, and people kind of just keep clinging on to that. I mean, it's a core that drives these groups. Right?
It's not like they made it up a couple of years ago.
Exactly. And these things they're long moving systems. Like our institution here, the United States of America, when it was first established, it was probably a smart system, but life happens. All systems start to degrade over time and are abused by power. So it's just all things that are first initiated are doomed to fall apart.
And reiteration. And
reiteration is what, see, that's the problem, is like either it's a perpetual fall or like a phoenix, we're reborn. And so that's my worry, is that we don't get to that point and we just fall.
I have a feeling that
we don't make a new.
I mean,
right, like that's the threat.
As long as nuclear holocaust doesn't happen, we'll get it.
But I think that we as human beings will want, because we want change, and we recognize the change, that there's needed, that it's needed, that the people
water?
Go
for
that.
it. Oh, I thought you were talking about the water. My bad. Ooh, there you go.
Okay.
That's a strawberry banana.
Okay. Thank you.
Ooh, it's a little bit tangy. There's no button. You just
breathe
it. I say hit it like a milkshake, like you're trying to suck a thick straw,
Could I make a keto milkshake? Cynthia, get going.
That's a good question. Though. I mean, we got real heavy into it. We can kind of pull back a little bit. But what were you saying?
I was just saying that I think that I think the human being, and its necessity for change and to survive, right, and to like promote its own wellness and future, right, because we as human beings, we need to have an ability to envision something, I think, for the future. And I think that kind of takes care of it for itself. I think that takes care of the whole issues that we have with the systems, because I do think that they want them to change. But I do think that there is such a thing as corruption and like power and like how all those things kind of affect our ability to just see like the brighter side of taking on that change, because people are afraid.
People definitely do fear the task of even understanding.
Because I don't think that change is easy. Like change is super uncomfortable, and like once you've reached like this state of like a moment where you're finally comfortable, it's
hard.
Like
you gotta hit it hard, like a milkshake. Like you're trying to suck a marble through a straw.
I like what you're saying. That's a good point.
No, she's on a very good point.
Yeah, and I want to say that. See, it is real hard, but no one has these kind of conversations. What you get instead is short YouTube videos, commercials, which are little bites of information, and like talk show style shows, which for decades have dominated people's minds.
Because they're digestible.
Exactly. I mean, Fox News is... I mean, my dad's gotten old, and that's now all he's turned to. And he's I'll be straight up, everyone. My dad is Donald Trump.
Oh, no!
I understand that wall. It's nuts.
I understand that.
His last name's Guerrero. How fucking stupid is that? Jesus Christ.
I don't know, man.
Like, you feel like he's not valuing his roots, like where he's coming from kind of deal, and he's chosen to take in what's around him as his only sense of truth.
I think my dad is an excellent example of a human being who probably understood that he had a great opportunity, but the system has kind of screwed him out of having a better one, and that in older age and a fair amount of resentment later, he kind of has just let himself fall into the frame of mind that he has and his situation. And so the best thing he could do is to realize that and move on and have a better perspective, but he doesn't do that instead. Instead, he lets it be resentment, and he lets it build, and he lets it be washed away with drink when he needs it. And that's a really poor answer, because what do you do in that situation? You feed the resentment.
Yeah.
And so then you... Grows. Exactly. So you listen to garbage on conservative sources that are, I can tell, are spinning it.
To garbage that keeps your way of thinking alive, or like that way.
Yeah, that's what it is, and and that supports a system of power, and that's what those shows are doing.
Yeah,
and it's being carried out into the people.
I like that you named it a system of power, because just as there are those kinds of systems of power, there are better systems of power as well. While everybody can argue that each system of power has its like good and its bad, like I think that this is where it comes down to identifying how you can develop your own positive system of power that can potentially override the negative ones that that are in your immediate circle or your immediate world, because not everything is applicable to you. Like, I don't know what's going on in China. I don't know what's going on in like Europe, you know, and like I know very little about Mexico, and like, but there's like certain, like every person around us has their own universe, you know? And like, while I might be a little bit a part of Daniel's and right now a little bit a part of yours, how much do we all affect each other, you know? And how much do we all affect our own sense of how we feel like we can move forward and how we feel like we can thrive without the effects of feeling threatened or feeling like your sense of power, right? Like overriding my own sense of my own power. Because I think that it's important for each one of us to feel our own sense of power, like that we have our own ability to be independent, have our own ideas, and even test them and not have the right ones, and like make mistakes around each other when you might not like the kinds of mistakes I'm making, you know, free of judgment. But yes, while you are judging me, you kind of have, because you care, because I'm a part of your universe, wanting to feed me with something good, right? Even if I don't know that what you're trying to give me is what I need, because we all have our own sense of power. So it's like, even though, in that situation with your dad, him being in this cycle of like, it's himself feeding this like this negative power, right? Or that we're calling it negative. Maybe in Trump's world, it's a positive power, obviously.
Yeah. I'm not knocking negative power. It's immensely powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at the negative forces that have worked in our store.
Outrage has become the most addictive emotion for people now, so it's just easy to fall in line with.
Well, I think that style of power has long been wielded quietly and without complaint from those below, or not loud enough complaint. Like, I mean,
I don't understand. I didn't follow that part.
Like Mr. Trump as a type has long been dominant in, I think, the business world.
Oh, yeah.
As a standard
100%.
type. Has been plenty of managers that I've met.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, as a type of person.
It's the egotistical mindset.
Yeah, and that's just awful to work for and under. Like, that's no one you respect.
But that's the key that kind of ties both of those together, is there's the egotistical mindset, but you were kind of wondering how you expose people to the idea that your worlds are connected, but that you guys both have power.
That we both have power that can work together.
It requires an ability to kind of reveal to people the fact that you have mutual and equal power in each other's situations, and that you can help each other using each other's mutual power. So it's just so hard to convey that without feeling superior.
Absolutely. See, here's a big issue. There's this lovely section, and I think it's on love of the neighbor in Thus Spoke Zarathustra.
Okay.
It has to do with you should shun love of the neighbor.
Oh.
And this is kind of a riff on
Nietzsche,
the Bible's
he loves
love of
to
the neighbor.
play
That's the point of the title and what he first gets into, because that love of the neighbor makes you do a lot of negative things in his mind. Just for the example, what he's trying to get to, and I recommend the whole book if you have the time. It's extraordinary
really
text. He's trying to get to, you should better love as a cause your friend, and love your friend as an equal to yourself, and have yourself strive to be the equal to your friend. A world of equals is what we should strive for. Respect in each human being and their difference. And okay, I'll be straight up. Like, Maria was my enemy when she arrived. Like, she would, I mean, she and I, we're wired similarly, but similar minds are actually opposed to each other.
They clash a lot,
Yeah, like our types in specific. Like Maria and are my own type. Same was Brent. Brent and I spent 8 months not really talking, making strange across the restaurant eyes. Before, after, like, I consistently opened for a few Saturdays, he used Game of Thrones to, like, so what are you into?
That's what I love about culture, is it's something for even the fucking weirdos to be like, maybe.
But no, from there, like later on, Maria would say that she never heard Brent laugh, like, when he and I were on the line.
That's so sweet.
Dude, I'll say this straight up, like, I've talked dirt on some stuff at Cheesecake, but my best days have been working there.
Oh, yeah.
Like, some of those afternoons working, like, a fucking busy day with Brent, where it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was hard, but it was fun.
You have the most quality
shit.
moments. Well, that's even with someone like Maria, while there is a majority of the time where it's kind of rough, there's those small moments of things being smooth and, like, she's easy-going for a moment. Where it, like, completely justifies it. I love the way she treats,
like, her child. Like,
you've met her kid?
I love Maria.
Yeah. See, like, there's so many great, wonderful human things about her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's only
she knows
unfortunate.
how to be human.
Yeah, I see. That's what's unfortunate. Like, she knows better, and must have chosen the negative choice in a lot of cases. What I was trying to get to is that what I initially is, before I broke into touching on Brent as well, is that Maria first and I, our personalities clashed, and we stayed clashing for a very long time. And, like, I remember a moment where you're like, God, why do I have to have this god-awful, monstrous patience to deal with this horse shit? Like, I can tell she's an intelligent human being. Like, what the fuck is up with this stupid woman?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm the fucking same as you. Like, I'm like, why am I being the patient one for this shit? Like, you and I are the same. Like, cut this shit out.
Yeah.
Because just, like, this bullshit attitude has no place.
She's this immovable object. That's the thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to slap her for being stupid, because that type of behavior is, like, knock this shit off. Like, knock it off.
But the power structure.
And so, exactly. So, like, she kept pushing and pushing and pushing till one afternoon I had it, and we blew up at Posy 61, broad daylight,
right in the
day.
middle of it.
Oh man,
right in the middle.
Like I think 2 other people were there, and like we're like, whoa,
yeah. So you just addressed it.
Yeah, we addressed it right there, and I ended with, "Damn it, treat me like a human being," and that just dropped her right there, like that stopped it, and she like cut her shit, and what I needed addressed, we got to. She thanked me for my patience. I said, thank you. I said, thank you for your patience. Thank you again. And then we moved on. And after that, we just worked together.
Yeah.
But I think some people are set up to push boundaries, perhaps even when they shouldn't, even when they know better. And I think that's the egotistical personality. Until they're checked, they're going to try and exploit and use every opportunity to an advantage, whether it's a personal advantage or a work advantage, which is professional, which is connected to yourself. So I think that there's types that are wired and pushed to drive onwards and succeed at any cost. Highly detrimental.
Yes.
And look at the cost to a manager. Like anyone there will say they don't pay you enough. Like, only Frank's probably getting a deal with 6 figures, a car, and then the bonus from the store, and then
For the
probably
record,
shares.
I'm totally okay with you, Frank. Don't fire me. I know he would never watch a podcast, but in the small case that he would, I try to stay on the good side of everyone that I'm currently employed by.
I just don't like any of the trouble I have received from this management team, and for me, that's a real thing. So that's the only reason why I ever talk about it.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, then...
It's important, though. It's important to address.
And I'm not... I don't need to bullshit about it. Part of me, it happened, and there's behavior that occurred at the store that I don't agree with.
Yeah,
I still don't agree with.
It's important.
But I'm not going to address it right now. I'm not.
Yeah,
gonna
that's
dive
the thing. Is there's a environment.
I guess that kind of leads me to like wondering. Okay, so what is it exactly that you're most hoping to start talking about? Like, what are conversations that you feel like are needed to be had? Not necessarily in regards to work. It could be. It could be. I just don't know what you're necessarily aiming for. But I think that it's very important for you to have your own agenda. If you are going to be our podcast leader,
I do have an agenda, so thank you for driving down this lane.
Yeah,
it takes the right podcast to get.
What's your game here, Dad?
Well, Luan was an example to just talk. I think.
Yeah.
But there was no attempt. I think, at a bigger agenda out.
Okay.
I was still fleshing out the podcast. But what I've looked at is I've always had this intuition that I could maybe do more. Lead something. I don't know. I don't like this idea that,
Where have you been led?
I tend to believe that because of my unique happenstance, just developing the way I have, experiencing what I experience, and thinking the way I do, that just on an instinct level, and I've tended to come to trust my instinct a lot.
Definitely.
Like I feel this immense inclination to try and help the world right itself. And I think that hit me heaviest as far back as when I was in 5th grade, when I realized that people weren't really patriotic in a real way. Like, I understood historical films and how people used to act and behave, and I comprehended at a very young age that the patriotic America we're sold and educated on doesn't exist. That's a figment of history which is propagated.
But the instinct to right the world, though, is such a complex thing.
Isn't that
because it comes in so many forms,
isn't that such a big?
Because Christians have the instinct to right the world, and it ends with the Crusades.
Absolutely,
it's just there's a lot of dramatic, examples of.
I think those examples we can definitely pick over as large scale kind of cultural historical events specific to different organizations, times, peoples. And the self-interest of specific individuals. I think specific individuals were able to move a lot more in those days as much as today.
Yeah.
And so I think that sometimes when you look at events like the Crusades, you have to look at the motivations of specific individuals in the time. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. So
it's important
to say that the Christians wanted to right the world and that's what the Crusades were, that's you can connect all that, but because there's so much more going on, let's not look at that as an example. Maybe we can stand apart and say what we want to say first, and then we can assess that. So one example is, I'm thinking small. I'm not going to write the world tomorrow, but I'd love to maybe start something which is a big push later, right?
Yeah.
You know, like.
But that's the thing, is a big push is
you
like
don't know,
so.
but you do know. I think that you're saying I don't know because you don't, because you.
I don't know where the road, how far it will go yet.
Right. But you do have an idea of the realm in which you would like to make some sort of an impact.
Yeah, I'd like to be some sort of human activist. I
Okay,
mean, like for example,
the human being.
Yeah. So I mean, okay,
there's a lot down.
there you go.
It's not animals,
there you go. Okay,
know?
so I kind of got onto this transgender thing late in my life. Okay. But for me, I feel like that's a whole story and video in itself, explaining that whole thing. But for me, I kind of got to it later in life. And coming to it, like I have kind of a more kind of historiographical, political, philosophical background. And I grew up religious before coming to like my own spiritual understanding of the world. And so for me, I've been using transhuman being to kind of more safely and securely integrate myself with the rest of the world, because I am just a human being like the rest of you. But I do understand that I am a distinct person marked out in society, and I kind of like wear it that way. That, and the podcast for me is my way to get that out there, my humaneness, you know. And I know a lot of truth is uncomfortable for people, but you know, sometimes it's a necessary truth, and it's maybe a reality check that we need, all of us, when we do hear it. And I think that starting small with just the podcast and using something social that we all go through, like urban decay, the homeless epidemic across, well, probably America, like I'd really like to highlight that if I could. Like I think that's something which could be like a philanthropic movement that we could bring attention to. And I had like we were kind of getting, I was a little buzzed and high last time. And those things that Morgan made were just terrific. I forgot what it was, flax something.
Oh yeah, the flaxseed drinks or whatever.
Yeah, they were just delicious.
But
what I was getting to is like I had kind of an idea about how I would structure a rehabilitation system.
Oh, okay.
That I already have that in my mind. Like I would want to like I think of the interior of California example as probably being a lot of pristine beauty, a lot of sparse little towns, but not a lot of economic activity, honestly. No big cities, no.
You wouldn't want to just partner up with other people who are already in a part of rehabilitation centers, or
I want to solve the problem.
Or is it because you don't trust their process to get people through, and that's why you want to develop your own way of getting people from where they're at to where... it's hard for me to say to where you want them to go, but you know, obviously it's where a better general sense of direction than where they've led themselves to.
It's the second one, and you're correct, and I understand that's, you know, hubris, let's say. Unless I fail. But and like I always pick up new ideas and ways that we can alleviate. Like I'm not trying to make it all about what I want. I'm trying to make it about let's help these people out, that they can also help out society as much as possible
give them
at the same
voice,
time. And Morgan brought up I think this halfway house kind of example. And I'm like, you know what, getting people just not working for money, but connected into work, back in society, having been rehabilitated. Okay, so now they're in a house with people with some sort of shared background and experience who have also been rehabilitated, and you're not buying, you can't get anything. You're getting, let's say, a type of payment which can then only be spent on products and things at this place. So it's kind of like a safe zone that allows you to venture out into society and function still, or learn to function. Otherwise, let's be honest, I mean, you're either then in a center, some sort of psych ward or mental place, who knows the quality, or you're on the street. It's those three, right? Like, isn't that the system now?
So, in terms of what you would have envisioned for a change, do you want to kind of go at a structural, like institutional, dismantling certain programs and reallocating it into
I would like to privatize as much as possible to make this a feasible thing. Also, I think California unions are destroying our budget, especially our future state. And so I don't want a big state apparatus operating this kind of thing.
How could you even bring somebody in to be rehabilitated if, let's say they do, I don't know how else to describe it, but without like, or they have like some kind of disorder, right? where in like a state court of law, they could at some point be like, I never wanted this in the first place, and like I wasn't in like the best state of mind to have like been brought in like
yes. Yeah, okay, so that's why we as voters of California get to decide that.
Like,
that's a hard truth, but that's the truth. My pardon.
Oh, okay, so now that means now you're just moving it into starting a like having your.
It's going to be a large scale social movement. Like we okay. I bring this one up a lot.
This brings up good.
Like people just like there's a whole sense that seems to allow people to like they will not look at them. You know, they resist the urge to look at homeless people, but they're there and they're a sap on society. My pardon, but that's the truth. Now, the homeless, it seems, will always be with us. Unfortunately, just
I think
how
so
society is set up, how people function, how they're built, what's going on inside. It seems that people just they end up there. So we should have an apparatus to catch these people, rehabilitate the ones who can be, and put back in society if they are, because either they're mental, pardon me, or they've been broken by drugs and need, or they're honestly they might have it in them to do some sort of work still, and so they could be reintegrated back into society. But the other ones, what do you want them on the street?
I don't think anyone could, like, in good conscience say that they desire for people to be living on the streets. Like, it's just, I feel like people have come to accept that to them it seems like a part of nature, and also, that's like the dangerous part about it is it's not good to just accept nature. We should strive to change it.
See, that's where I could sell a huge part of the country and the right side of the country.
Yeah, I hope you can. Tell me
how. All across America, I want to build a universal city on the hill.
How so?
I want America to be the shining city. Okay, that ideal that Washington was something quite more once.
Yeah.
All right, we had this patriotic idea of America once until we found out that our government was doing a lot of fucked up shit. My part in history has proven that a lot of shit's been going down, and you know, president's the same as any of us, and they all seem to get clued into doing a lot of bad shit.
Yeah, they're just human punching bags for us.
Yeah, they just become part of the system and execute the orders of the empire.
Yeah,
that's what I think.
So
I think America's done a lot of bad shit. What people fail to
realize is that when they blame a specific figure for something, it's like you don't realize how much time there is in the day and how many thousands of people are approaching with like, oh, we need to do this thing, sign this bill, and he's like, okay, now.
Yeah,
so they just approve
to,
things without
you
understanding
become part of the empire.
Because people are very manipulative naturally, so they find their best way to paint their intentions so that they're
I think it's very hard to call people manipulative just right off the bat, because I think that it's more that by nature the things that we say, the way that we react, like everything that we do is sensed by the other person, and hence could be it could influence you to think something a certain way or to behave and react in another way. And so like if you are trying unless you are trying to paint us human beings as mostly manipulative, then I'm just saying.
I think
up
high, there's a lot
individuals
of are self-serving.
Yeah, there's a lot of politicians out there who have developed this language of being able to get what they want and I
think it's because it's a lot of. I think
also something that they need as a politician.
Look at the class of person who is a politician and who is okay. Is it the voters may vote, but who is deciding who's running? Right? Is it the public or is it someone who's like produced basically by a think tank and corporate dollars?
Yeah,
that's been our politicians for a long time. Like we're all like only right now I feel like are we getting a bunch of like ground up politicians like this like I'm a teacher, I'm a whatever, right? Like a lot of those like before
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the girl from New York, that's a Hispanic congresswoman now. Like that's the thing is it's just now happening that we're getting people from different cultures to be in politics, and it's like fucking finally we're getting other voices into our systems, which is we've been pretty monosyllabic for a while where we have the white male.
We could use a third party that could take 100%. Advantage of a centrist position and I think appease both parts of the left and right. I think there's like I think good rule, like good governing is possible, and it would take a position that would be multifaceted. I think when you're kind of you're on the left or the right, you're kind of stuck in that position. You know, it's hard to make a deal.
There doesn't seem any alternative to it.
Rather, you should trust a party in person that knew to be able to take a deal. That could be multifaceted. That could be left, right, or center, whatever was required of the situation.
So your city on the hill.
That's what I'm saying, is that we had this ideal once of what America was. Maybe it was never that.
Yeah.
And I tell my dad that, and he gets all like, like, dude, you're a boomer. You've totally worked.
Because
like,
I'm sure
you got a great deal.
Within a certain percentage of the population, they believe there was a city in the hill era, but to a large majority, they were like, we were outside that city.
No, I mean, okay, so for example, like...
But do you really feel like everybody needs to be a part of the city in order for the city to function and be able to create results? No.
I do think that. I think that the world is changing in a huge way. Resources and the scarcity of them is going to drive this human race into our own self-destruction. We're going to destroy this world for resources pretty soon. Like, I'm not big. I don't care about talking about the global warming issue. I'm just the scarcity of resources to live and function is going to drive populations nuts, and governments are going to do whatever is necessary, and citizens will agree with that. That's not good for anyone's future. I mean, come on, be real.
It's the state of where things are unraveling.
Exactly.
Towards,
And so I'd rather alleviate that looming edge, right? That cliff edge that we can see, that we can sense, right? Like, everyone had like Trump's president. It's all fucked now.
It's over.
It's over. Yeah, like,
it's over.
It's like, damn,
no, this is just one step in the process.
It's going in that direction, but I don't like that instant jump. Like, it's like, no, that should be a sign. To kick it into gear. Maybe take another look at what's going on. And I think that largely that has happened.
What do you think is going to be what keeps you moving forward with this idea if you don't see any results?
That I should just keep going. I don't care. That's what I believe.
So what do you think is other than getting straight into the politics and like becoming a politician, how do you
I don't think that's exactly what I should do. I think it's being someone who I think can motivate large social groups. It seems like you need to be able to do some sort of speaking engagements. You need to be able to grab influence. I mean, like when Ben Shapiro was trying to go to Berkeley. I mean, oh my God, when not letting him in probably worked out even better.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, so being a voice that's attacked, being a voice that's held up, either one works.
And it's easier now to find your own voice online than ever before. So there's more potential for you to just kind of reach out into the current and hook onto someone.
I think that's exactly it. And I think that maybe people are getting real sick of very left, super PC voices. And people are also getting very tired of super right, nonstop right. Like, there's so much right. It's horseshit, not right.
There need to be someone who takes into consideration all the different types.
You can't hover in war mind forever. Like, 1984 doesn't work. Okay? Like, people, they turn away from it eventually. Like, it's proof. Like, honestly, like, I remember when Trump got elected, like, for months, every, like, middle and left newspaper was, like, citing, like, this government's turning right, and there's conservatives taking power here, and it's all, like, they're painting a really negative turn for the world. But I mean, the reality of it, like 2 years later, in the writing now going out, it's much more reflective, and you look back and it's like, it wasn't a terrible shift and danger in the world. It was a power shift that happens almost every 4 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or how Americans
inherent
change
in the
political
flow of things is for things to be flipped back and forth. But it's easier to grab a headline if you make it extra dramatic. And it's like, this is the fucking end.
I think that philanthropic efforts and not small government, but government integrated with business. Ethical business would be rewarded, I think, with contracts. Efficient, ethical businesses.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we need to incorporate businesses, but also kind of push them towards a more unified, hopeful, optimistic vision instead of a divided, statistical.
You know what I think happens is I think the state wants to interfere with business because business is very much involved in people's lives. The state has an interest in people's lives, their livelihoods. Okay, they're a producing member of the state, right? Body politic. let's say that, I mean, there's this huge fight then in this triangle situation, right? Where the people also make up the state and the business is integral to the functioning of the people in the state. And so and then there's these authority figures that exist apart and out from the state, you know, to either affect business or support people or like, you know, and so, and so you start to see that there's tentacles interconnecting all of this shit. What if we could just somehow, you know, fuck it, let's work together. Yeah. Right? None of this cross-purpose shit. Let's work together. You know, like, people today bitch like hell about unions and how they're redundant and they sap money and time and they're wasteful today. But if they're honest, most people then admit, well, they were useful for when they were important. Yeah. And they were necessary then. But like we brought up earlier, systems tend to fall apart and degrade over time. Yeah. So we have this big bitching fest about the state of our union, which, ironically enough, like, isn't going on right now. Yeah. And it's like Trump hits us like a wrecking ball, and we all wake up and realize, yeah, the country's much more fucked up than we realize, and we're all kind of awake because we're being threatened with all this, you know, like, oh, I'm going to take away trans rights. I'm going to kick these people out of the military. I'm going to do this. I'm going to screw with our allies. And like, people are like waking the fuck up, right? What's the term, getting woke? Yes, they woke. Yeah, there you go. Is that how you say that? Like in conversation? Woke. Yeah. See, I'm like, I'm 30. I'm not sure. It's like, I feel like I'm not into like modern lingo. Oh yeah, my part. I'm very much. This is gonna be the interesting part. All my friends are black, so like I'm very with what people are saying now. I dig that. I spent some time in Long Beach, and I love the community there. Yeah. And my girlfriend, she went to Polytechnic High there, which is like, and so she was like a white girl, Greek white girl. That was black, basically. Yeah, she was a really interesting person. That's what I love about America, though, is that you can kind of come into contact with so many different styles of thought and so many different cultures that whether you like it or not, become a part of you through like osmosis, where it just seeps into your personality, and you're like, suddenly I speak with a southern accent. Don't know how that happened. Like it's really slowly over time you become your environment. I think people, depending on where they're from, are more prone to that than others. I think people who are most adaptable, and I think people in our industry tend to be that case, the most successful ones, because I do that like on a whim. It's like people, my people, when I was serving, people used to say, "Are you an actor?" And I'd have to say no, and I'd have to think, like, why are people asking this frequently enough? And then I'd realize that I would pick up accents and with interaction with guests, and I do it unnaturally, and then people who've been close to me have commented on it over the years, and I haven't really thought about it for a long time. But I think people do that. People do that, right? And then let's say you're someone from a specific place, you know, you're more like you're out from Arkansas and you're doing Disneyland for the you know, like this is the Disneyland trip that you're taking like once in 10 years, and you know, you're out here and here's this crazy motherfucker that's copying you now, and you're like, what the fuck's up with these California guys? Well, these fucking... I don't know how they talk about Arkansas, I'm sorry. We don't know. I can say that I have ancestors from Arkansas. Okay. Arkansas. If we were... Oh, God. Okay. We're not going to get into grammar. Fuck grammar. It's American. But, American. I mean, getting back to our restaurant, just to ground things a little bit, I feel like the type of person that we work with, for the most part, there's a lot of variation, obviously, have this desire to help people, and they want to do it in a way that's, you know, morally okay. And I feel like feeding people is the greatest, like, motivation, because it's so universally needed, and you're coming here willingly. We're not trying to sell you shit on the street or anything. It's such a therapeutic place to be, the Cheesecake Factory, because it's kind of a shelter from the chaos, and, like, it's still a little crazy itself, but it is a enclave, I guess, like a safe structure. Yeah, that we've created to foster an experience for people, whether or not they come expecting that or not. They're just like, oh, suddenly I'm in the Cheesecake Land, like Disneyland does, but I feel on a high level. Used to mean more. I think that used to mean more. I'm sure it did, but I feel like when beforehand. I mean, when I started in 2006 till now. Yes, it definitely used to be more. They were the all white, and it was much more. It's not just that, like, but there were things in place that were like great presence was a thing, and like management was, at least when the good management team was functioning, like, you know, kept morale up, and like we hustled each other enough that like we got shit done.
Yeah.
Like we created a environment where, you know, a guest could get absolute guest satisfaction. That happened. I feel like at some point that changed. And I'm not sure if we started hiring different or just changed how we operated, but that type of culture is no longer present in the company. And I've let it go. But I used to comment on it much more when I started.
Yeah, I mean,
it's been something I've talked loudly enough and consistently enough on the line when shit goes wrong that people remember it, and so they know me for that fact. Like, oh well, Devin goes back far enough that he knows. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a combination because it's definitely partly the management. Like, it's not a secret that people have become different personalities over time, and like, but also the employees as well, which makes it a combination of the fact that culture has changed since then too. People's expectations have lowered a lot, like, so our expectations of how much effort we need to put in have also kind of simmered down.
That might be it. Yeah. For here's something, and I'll connect it to something Cornell said once when I first got to Anaheim.
My other favorite human being in the world.
This is a very wise man. Just putting that out there.
Cornell is a wise man.
He's the one that he told me I lived in Strong Beach. And I was like, ooh, I love that.
Strong Beach.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
love you, LB. Okay,
what did Cornell tell you?
Well, let's get to that in a second. Okay, so my point is that when it was 2006, like the internet was going strong, but like it's like social media was not a huge thing yet. I feel
it wasn't the life
right. Facebook wasn't huge, and MySpace was I think dying off.
Yeah,
like it was those days.
2006 was MySpace like height. So
yeah, so like I feel in the time between I got hired, I remember my time there to when I came back in 2013. That we had been rated or had become like America's favorite restaurant, and like our brand was really blowing up. Like I think maybe Huntington was store 112. I'm not sure, but I feel like we've got like 150 plus at least in the United States, probably more now. And I think we're still opening stores. I think like we're trying out, I think like smaller concept stores.
Really?
Yeah. As I understand it, Ventura is really tiny.
Oh, okay.
And then like such a small concept that it's like, okay, that's a Cheesecake Factory. Because I'm used to big stores personally.
Yeah.
Like I'm used, like Huntington was decent size, then Anaheim's big.
And I love that part about it, of how grandiose and just
it's gorgeous.
Cheesecake Factory
is.
And
it's like you want the service and the food,
to match.
Everything about it to go with it, right? It's just unfortunate when bad attitudes come in, but good service can get over that, and it's no problem.
Yeah,
I think it's when the system falls apart or it's let go, things start to get bad. Sum total. Now, what I'm getting to is that sometime in there, I think just how popular our stores became, it changed who comes in, maybe, and there was a change in how we operated, maybe who we hired. Like I was told that, like, hey, people don't usually get to jump up so quick from bakery to server. You should count yourself lucky. And I only found out, like, because we did a hiring thereafter, where we were only just now then letting in people without the 2-year minimum serving experience.
Oh, I see.
And so, like, okay, we did change hiring practices.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of great people that were hired that didn't come from serving. Right? There's great human beings everywhere who just work.
To find them.
And so I think that makes a more dynamic crew. People who've done different things.
More diverse, too.
Yeah. And you just hope that they fall into line with how the team operates and the serving world.
It's hard to hope.
And it's hard to, see, that's where I advocate moving up from position to position, unless you're like a solid server to begin with.
Yeah.
Because, like, honestly, like, we should have a completely cross-trained store, because that way if server calls out, you push a runner into a serving station.
100%.
And, like, boom, you're now making more money.
Yeah.
And what runner wouldn't like that? Right?
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
And it is noticeable when people come straight into serving with little experience compared to someone who started here, worked to this.
They know the bakery, so they know the menu, so they know the sauces, so they know everything. So like that's such a like, the reason why I've probably been on top of my shit for so long is probably because I came from the bakery in the cashier position, and that set me up for success. And I think that's the best thing we can do. And I think that, like, recently, I think the staff's doing really good. I just have been, a loud voice against management. I think that's my biggest speak. But I think that speaks more to a wider shift in how the company decided to change how it ran. I think that's what Like, I think the negative aspects of management have always been there.
Yeah.
And there's been those awesome individuals like Brent and a few others who kind of shine through. And it's like, this person's awesome. I love working for this person. This person makes work fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like, those people are there, of course. But that negative management, I think, has probably always existed. Now, the company has probably done a shift of its own more recently. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. And I feel
like your voice is definitely the embodiment of that. Like, at least a reaction to it, you know? Because that change is apparent to some people who have been there like you have. But it is just the status quo for the people who are coming in. And so they just learn to accept that's the way the management is or whatever. But being able to have the perspective that you have seen both types is important to kind of reveal to the people who are just getting in and they're like, this is the way it is. They're like, no, but there's potential for a different form of behavior.
Yeah, I was always taught that like a restaurant should be like an experience for someone. You know, maybe that's an older perspective on what going out means. And I think a lot of people don't know how to go out. I'm always shocked when like someone is like a whole family is completely socially awkward. I'm like, oh my goodness.
That's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like
you see a whole table where they're all on their phones, even like the 1-year-old. And you're just like,
or they can't even communicate to you very well. It's really hard. Now, what I was going to get to is Carnell and something he spelled out when I got to Anaheim, that by the time children are running through the aisles, your concept's dead.
Your concept's dead. How so?
So he's saying that, like, you go far enough back, and like Cheesecake Factory, I wouldn't like say it was ever hoity-toity. It is. Oh, it's nice.
I see.
Casual dining.
Yeah.
But it was like.
It wasn't like 5-star, but it was.
It was nice.
Approachable
like you know, like okay, I didn't share. Like, I took a lift from somewhere in Long Beach back to Huntington with this driver, and he loved cheesecake. He'd been going there for like decades, when he was like younger, and we just got to talking for a while because like traffic was backed up or something, and so we were like talking cheesecake and history with it, and how, like, you know, he grew up in Compton, and for him, he'd have to drive out to Redondo Beach and the cheesecake there to like, I want to get a slice of cheesecake. Yeah. And so like, it's something, but you went the distance for that, because it wasn't just a singular place and a singular thing, but to go to cheesecake meant something more. That's what I also mean, right? Like, it wasn't just more singular, but I mean, it meant more than it might mean now.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting perspective because, like, I mean, tying it back to how we were saying that, like, Disneyland is an experience, right? Coming to the Cheesecake Factory, it's an experience. And, like what, like, I think that just kind of comes down to, like, what are we, like, what, I think you have to, like, value certain things in order for somebody else to, or you have to value similar ways of changing your mind, or, like, I guess, like, wanting, or your idea of fun has to align with that environment or that structure that you're like walking into. Like, you're like primed over time to believe that Disneyland's like the happiest place on earth, so you go, but then you hit the lines. And obviously one could say that growing up, like, when there was like less people who were going as often, you know, was probably a lot more.
That's Pineapple Express now.
Was a lot more fun than it is now, because of the amount of time that it takes for you to just experience, to just experience one ride, you know. So for some people don't even like going to Disneyland. It's just the idea of it that keeps them feeling like fun exists around them, you know. And like, I just think that it's just an interesting perspective to like focus on structure and focus on how like a specific way of thinking, or a specific way of believing that something needs to be experienced is actually being experienced. So like, we might have our own ideas of like how people should be experiencing their time at Cheesecake, how people should be experiencing their time at Disneyland, how people should be experiencing their time at a concert, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they're experiencing. And I think that means that we have to, instead of thinking about how do we look, focus on how other people are in this exact moment in time feeling, thinking, and actually hence then responding and acting and behaving in the way that they are when they walk into our structure, our space. Like, are we giving them what they need to feel at ease and feel free to experience something new and like challenging, or just like, does that make sense? Like,
I hear that, and,
like,
and I think that we can
thinking more about them than thinking about how we look, because I can focus as much as I want on the way that I look and the way that I would hope that you would find me appealing or attractive in a way where it would we'd be pulled together in some way. But that means nothing if I don't think it's as valuable as me like thinking about you first and recognizing what you've come to value, good or bad, and how it's affecting you. Just like recognizing like where you're at, and then being like, how can I be of service for you?
I think that's.
Does that make sense?
No, I hear that. I hear that. And I got a great example that you both and all three of us, because I've had to do it before. You know, when you're in the filler spot, and you got to take names, like it's fuck is busy.
Yeah,
right?
It's busy.
It's literally
like any filler at Cheesecake knows that feeling, right?
Friday night, 30 names
respect,
on the way.
Respect to those people. Holy shit. Okay. So, no, like, if you can hold that spot on your own, like, you got an iron will. So, respect to those people. When you're just taking names like that, and you just have to respond, like, me and Brent had this talk that, like, when you have to, like, when people are like, under pressure, like, their performance goes, like, way up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they have to respond, and very often they will meet that response and then act in the moment, and then reach this perfect state. And a lot of people will describe today it's very popularized as a flow state.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, you hear that term a lot these days.
Yes.
Like, I've connected it. I remember reading a sci-fi novel where the same type of sense was like, a whole chapter was spent talking, kind of like leading up to it, but this perfect state. But essentially, it's come to the same thing, you know, to kind of exist like lockstep with the moment, you know, like not really reacting, moving completely with it.
Okay.
Usually when the difficulty of the task meets your preparedness.
Yeah. You know, you are prepared for this event. You're going to meet it as it meets you, right? It's less a response. You're moving with it.
You're part of the ocean. I feel like, being a filler.
Do you feel like you have to be able to anticipate?
I think anticipation comes almost preternaturally.
Okay.
Right. I think the future comes to you when you're in this state. I think the future comes to you on this kind of natural wavelength. You are the wave, so you feel and see the wave coming. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. When you're in that state. So when you're in the fill spot, you are just like and you're in like the zone. You know what I mean?
Okay.
When you're on top of it, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a feeling there's a lot of people at a restaurant who have over time learned how to get into that, whether they even do it on purpose or not. But in the midst of the shift, they're like, "Oh, I'm totally just surfing through the fucking chaos." Like,
I got one who does it pretty well. Sarah May is pretty. She's on like a beeline, right? She's got a personality that she owns, and that's what she's playing there. And there's other people with strong personalities, but I'm not. Like, some people aren't like driven at the same like rapid speed as others. You know? So like, there's some people who are like the whole.
It depends on the environment. I do think that affects what motivates you to be that way, or want to, or desire to have that feeling there. Because everybody's different.
See, I don't like doing it as the fill, but I've done it as a reaction to like. There's no managers here right now. It's shit busy. Like, my person had to go, and for some reason the replacement's not here. If I'm alone at the desk, I have to take like 15 names, so I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. And that's what I love about, though, is that for most part, people who are experiencing multiple positions at a restaurant are able to just like just fill a gap as soon as it's needed, and they just kind of function for it, and they're like, okay, I can kind of adjust immediately. But then there's some people who aren't experienced, and they just immediately are like, I'll sit that out.
But I'm like, the same thing you get as getting to be the expo, but for me it's more comfortable back there because I spent so much time as the run and being server too, and so it's
being lead food runner is a high. Not really.
Lead food runner.
It's just that you do get into a flow where you kind of know how to maintain your spot as a food runner, and you're like, I got this. This is our place. Like, you don't need to panic about shit because everything can be fixed in the kitchen.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love so that's the thing is, even my fucking mom was telling me that she was doing some sort of teacher organization program where they were using the cheesecake model to kind of learn about efficiency and roles and how they play together as a system. And I was just like, as much as things are failing in certain ways, situationally, love the structure of cheesecake and how it has established like equal weight amongst many different people for them to feel valuable and feel productive, but also feel like a human that's like, oh, I can take my time in this interaction. And so maybe there's some people who are rushed all the time.
But I also think that it's just because we're in a restaurant, and like a restaurant ambience is usually of that. Like that's what people value there. Yeah. Their time that they're spending with each other, sitting at a table, dining. So a lot of it, I think, is just like ingrained with the simple culture of itself of having a meal. Like like when you have a meal, that's kind of what happens. So that's something that we value. Yeah. In a completely alternate space, like, I don't know, people who's a biologist or they're chemists, like, that's not what they value. They don't value chit chat, you know? But here in this space, that's something that people do look forward to, because that's just what it's been about, and it's what it's about now.
But what sets cheesecake apart is that, like, restaurants are all the same, everyone has that, but cheesecake has like a food runner so that the food gets out and the server can take their time doing other things. Like, as a server, I relax knowing that I don't have to run every single plate out because we have a specific role. Most restaurants don't have food runners, and most restaurants don't have bakers that like have a specific role, and cashiers, bakers. Like, there is very specific details that this company has written into the structure to help everything ease up a little bit so that it can take its time and be a little bit more quality. That higher touch.
I think that at one point management did a better job of circulating the floor and doing a better job to ensure that personnel were I wouldn't say the phrase doing their job, but we're putting in their hands, right? We're putting in their time. You know, I know who's taking their time hanging out with so-and-so out in patio 6 right now. Right? I know who is spitting game over at the desk and the baker counter. I know who's hanging out in the bar well. Right? Like, I know who's hanging by the pillar watching TV, right? Like, I mean, and this is not throwing stones. I'm just saying that it's just like everyone that has something. And, like, you know, it was being made to be an outcast at my first store that made me come into Anaheim. Like, I didn't want trouble, so that's why I didn't use my phone ever. I dealt with my tables, ran food, no food to run. I went to the bar to run drinks, no drinks at the bar, ran to cheesecake, no cheesecake to run, went back to my tables, and I did that repeat, and I used red line to keep myself energized with no break, start to finish.
Red line?
Yeah, it makes you work like a demon, but it's terrible.
Energy drink?
Yeah.
But see, do you think it's healthy for us to promote people like pushing their bodies with energy drinks?
It's totally not. It's totally not. But I'm saying, like, that was what I did.
Back then, you had much more of a responsibility to participate more. But don't you feel like it had a toll on you at a certain point? And so maybe it's good that we have other roles that are filled to cushion that, so that you don't have to feel pressured to have pounding energy drinks so that you can.
But that's my point. I felt like I came in and wanted to push myself real hard, and then I felt like in the time Cheesecake had changed, and now things were much more lax, where management was no longer pushed or driven to, you know, kind of get everyone to put their time in. Yeah. Honestly. Oh, okay. Because when the system works, I mean, like, everything gets up much quicker all the time. Yeah. And, okay, maybe you're missing out on sometimes, like, people live for those moments, but you don't always need those extra minutes between your tasks. Yeah, right? Definitely. You don't need to always be on your phone, right? Like, you have free time when it slows down, before it picks up, when everything's chill, after work, before you get there, right? Like, I love everyone there. I'm not horseshitting that at all. I love you all, even the people who've done me wrong, and there's some people in power who've done me wrong.
I understand that.
I still love you as you deserve to be loved, because I understand why you do what you do. And I don't say it to be mean to any of these people, but it can be exhausting to then, you feel like you have to be the best you can be,
to accommodate.
Yeah. And like, okay, like, a dog shits on the floor of your house, like you gotta fucking clean it up. No one else is gonna do it.
Yeah.
Right. So there's something that needs to be done right there. Okay. You gonna say no?
No, it definitely needs to be.
Like you just
what if they shit in
to
the restaurant?
I mean, you each are like real good employees.
Yeah.
And that's not a slight against anyone else. Like I know you both enough that you would, if the moment required, you'd step up to do what was needed.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Likewise.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're all the type of people who immediately step in and are like,
Yeah.
all right, this needs to be fixed right now because
Right.
there's glass on the floor or some shit. Like,
And I think when other people are pushed, then they react the same way, because we hire those types of people.
oh, I see.
But you see where I'm saying is
What
that
do you think is the push that they need?
so they need a management team that they respect and work with and not under.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
I see. Yeah.
People don't respect people above them if they don't respect those people to begin with.
Yeah.
You're going to respect people that you share work with.
So, like a slight name drop. I feel like one good recent example of that is someone who works with us and not over us is Jose, the food running lead basically guy.
Yeah.
He is constantly
great with
working with us to help things run smoothly, as opposed to just kind of
Yeah, he knew me
holding
from
the
way
reins
back.
over
Yeah, he
you.
worked
Oh,
at
really?
Hamilton.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
He's from the back. I was from the front.
That's awesome.
He's a really great guy to work with. I really like getting to, like, he had this idea to split the expo line because there were two of us, and it felt weird at first, but by the end of the night, like, it was working. It had been working great. So, like, you were
focusing on one side.
Yeah, and it was starting to work great. And so the next night, I carried it down to the next night with Brandon, and that worked like, dude, he was like, we should have two expos all the time. And I was like, tell someone that. Tell someone that.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that first thing.
You're like, oh, I love this. Yeah. Oh, God. That's but that's the type of shit that I'm talking about. Is it takes one person to have like a good idea, and then you're like, okay, we can spread this and incorporate it into other.
Here's where it gets bad is that I couldn't do it with Wesley. I don't want to. So you know what it is.
So many people have a hard time with
Same personality as Maria and especially Sean.
Right.
Where
it's like, immediately
where it's like
I'm
not saying anything bad is going on in either of their lives. With some of them, I happen to know much more.
But just discontent.
But the discontent comes out at work against employees under you.
But see, that means that the problem isn't with the environment at work. The problem is with the things that go on at home, things that you have carried on with you for longer periods of time, which means that it's required of a different kind of mind to work with you in order to help you move past that,
So what kind of things can we do to help the Wesleys?
Okay, that's not. I don't like.
But I'm just saying that if it is,
because I think that I'm equally as like somebody like who's eligible and needing other people who could help me get into like a completely different place or state of mind. Just because I personally know that I come from a place where I've held back so much, and it holds me from allowing myself to feel free to just say what I want, and just allowing myself to just like have that. Even though I know we all have our own voice, and growing up and hearing it time and time again pounded into my mind that as a woman that I should feel free to say whatever it is that's on my mind, right? With obviously being like knowledgeable of the people around me and not like trying to like hurt anyone, right? But if I have something that I want, that I should feel free to say it, Yeah. But I've also allowed myself to hold back so much growing up that I didn't give myself like the full, I guess, how can I better put it? I just didn't allow myself to,
like, permission to.
I don't even know if permission is the right word. Would you describe it as permission?
I mean, if you're trying to allow yourself, I would. Because even though people told you to speak up for it, you wouldn't allow
I chose
yourself.
not to.
Oh, okay.
I chose not to because I wanted to be the people pleaser, I guess. I wanted to do what everyone else wanted of me because I felt like I could. And then that fed my own track of like what made me feel like I was doing good and I was doing the right thing because other people were valuing the things that I was contributing to their table, to what they wanted.
Yeah.
And like, so recognizing that and being able to like see that, it says that there are things out there like that, maybe even for you or maybe even for Daniel or even maybe for like our managers or anybody out there, that we all have our own thing that leads us to behave and hold ourselves back or even like act and be certain ways that we are right now that don't necessarily have anything to do with the work environment and as much space as like a higher up like or a corporate person could try to give a certain cheesecake team, right, to be able to, like you were saying, like more food runners or more a second expo line person would ever change what's going on in our person, you know, walking into the restaurant. So I think that like a lot of this like brings to mind like your idea of like the whole rehabilitation thing. And like I would find it interesting to like hear what you would have to say as like your own like mini plan, because I'm somebody who's very much intrigued by how somebody thinks that they can get from one place to the next, and like having some kind of plan, because obviously not every plan is like gonna be at its best and they're always gonna be needing revisions. But then like I think that for you at least to be starting to solidify like your ideas instead of just constantly like airing out the conversation, I think would be very beneficial for your plans and your ideas to be met, and like actually like fleshing them out with us, so that way we could start to like see what we think about like how you think that we can get one person to go from like that bottom brink that we consider to a working class person.
I think that we could revolutionize industry in California and make jobs here and good paying jobs. And I think that local industry could employ a lot more people here in California. I think we need to really reconsider a whole host of issues in our state, as well as pensions, which is going to upset a lot of people. We need to talk about the import of unions today, which is going to upset a lot of people and money. And we need to talk about how the control of any legislature by one party will lead to a possible destabilization of a political system, because it seems very much like money is being unwisely spent in our state. I don't care about...
That's usually what's happening. People don't know how to spend money.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate what's going on right now.
And it's also, the other part of the problem that I think is that most of our ideas are coming from, like, we're being taught by the people in power already.
Right.
Of
these old systems, of
like
educating
they
people.
all, right, like everything before us and that is now is what's educating our minds to understand how things work. And even we might notice like little parts that don't work, but it doesn't prime our minds to be able to find the solutions to those problems. And I also don't think that we are surrounded by people who are capable of like bringing in new ideas and being open to them in the same way we were talking about earlier, when how each one of us has like our own sense of power, and how being in the same room or being in the same conversation, right, like it all contribute, like we're all able to influence each other equally, kind of deal. And like my idea, even though I'm young, even though I'm like not 50 and have lived, right, or been a politician, I still have my own ideas that could be of like contribution. And I don't even think that it's about having like an open forum, like where we're all just like, where there's one politician and then it's like against like 50 different people, because I've seen that before. I think it's just mostly about or I think it could be about like just like hearing one idea and just fleshing out like the pros and cons, and then having other people listen in on that, instead of a politician feeling like he has to defend his idea as a politician because he's a Democrat, because he's a Republican, you know. Just somebody who out there like in news, like or in some kind of like a podcast thing where we're just, somebody has an idea, and then as people from with different backgrounds, like kind of bring out why this idea would be best to be attached to this plan, to this course of action, you know, because then it creates we have a skeleton, right? We have like a backbone.
There's a goal. There's a
goal.
There is something that we want to alleviate in society.
Right.
All right. It seems like there's a lot of efforts to alleviate it. What if we were able to combine the efforts of these organizations into one collective umbrella that would effectively help get these people off the street and to a series of facilities enough to kind of maybe analyze, kind of identify them, and start to kind of...
There's power in labeling.
Yeah, it's true. We would need to break. We need to kind of sift them, right?
Like it sucks. Like I hate being labeled. Like it. Like.
But we all do fit into categories. But at least we here understand we're all human beings. And I want us to recognize that and recognize that's the same as those people that we're talking about. That we're trying to help our fellow human beings because they're not being helped and they're not going to be helped. In the world we live in, unless we do something, unless we look at them as human beings. And that's my point. And so we should be at least honest about that, so that we can recognize our differences and even the differences in these people. So we would need to. And even the
things that aren't that so different. Like, I think that for your project, if I was in your shoes, like something, like a way that I would start is by breaking down like what I fundamentally have come to value as a human being. And what I also haven't been valuing, what I've been taking for granted. Yeah. Because then that creates like a more honest narrative of like, I can't force you to start, like, I can't force you to value something that you've never like been primed to value throughout your entire life. Like, I can't, but I can recognize what the things that I've come to value and start to identify patterns amongst us all and be like, okay, well, clearly these are things that are necessities, right? And we all know that it's like food, shelter, and water, and of that sort. It's like clothing, right? And I even consider voice a really big one, like recognizing
we need community. We are social animals.
Yeah,
I'm not advocating like breaking people up into like wards and rooms. Or
no.
It's like open pasture, right? Like I want to move people like I don't mean like out to pasture. I don't mean that. But I mean,
no, I get it.
Like there's lots of parts of California that are just like untapped where the space is there.
Yeah.
You know, we could establish facilities that could safely house these people. We would definitely have the space, and that would create jobs, medical jobs, which are, decent pay at least. People are going to school for them like mad right now, right?
Right.
So I think there's a huge looming industry, perhaps, in psychic health.
Yes. I think that's the common thread amongst all of this.
I think social media is highlighting this across all groups in the world today.
Awareness.
There's a whole lot of shit going on inside that I think comes out because of social media. Like you're much nastier writing shit, maybe potentially. You are more willing to be open about stuff than you'll ever be in public. Yeah. Right. Like all this stuff that normally can't come out does.
Yeah.
Right. So I
feel like the common thread between all of those is the idea of valuing, and within social media, like we've kind of lost our gauge for valuing other people because we can immediately dismiss their opinion based off of one single tweet or whatever, one single point that they have thought. And whether it's the Cheesecake Factory or helping homeless people, that we've kind of forgotten to give people a voice, like she was saying, and that we've forgotten to value people as an ends in themselves instead of just a means to an end to help us get somewhere. And so whether it's the Cheesecake Factory not valuing their employees enough or us not valuing people on the streets enough, that we need to hit this switch amongst everyone that there is importance to every voice, and that you don't need to dismiss people just because they're in a perceived lower state than you are. And it's so quick to dismiss people. Everyone is so quick to dismiss
it's very interesting that, like, it only, okay, like, some people will agree with what I'm saying, but they won't do anything. Some people agree and want to do something. And there'll be various others who agree, disagree in various levels, correct?
Yeah.
That's how society falls. Because that's how those people are all wired, because society is wired different because we're all different people. You know, I recognize that this is not something that everyone, like, it's like, I don't give a shit, or, you know, or it's not my problem, or it's not me. Like, that's a natural response for so many millions.
It's so easy to just remove yourself from responsibility.
Yeah, and so that's, I mean, so this is the harder work of the world, you know? But I mean, how else do you build a better society? And that's the city on the hill I'm talking about.
I also think it's about keeping it very simple.
I think it should all be very simple, but I think that we certainly, I think here's an example. I've heard this one made before. America is certainly a place of freedom of choice for bullshit. Right? You can get any color car, you can get so many, like 31 flavors,
but
you can get this many types of cigarettes. Yeah, the things that should matter don't fucking, you know, they're not your fucking choice.
Yeah.
Right? Like, shit should be so simple here,
of choice.
and
like
you
it's
don't
not
have
your
power.
choice to
You
just
don't
be
have
happy.
power.
It's not
You
your
don't, yeah.
choice.
You got it.
You're
gonna
gonna
work yourself to die. I mean, like, some people stress just in the middle class income, like they're gonna fall under all the time, you know. And people are fucking worried because they're jacked into the system because they've got payments, they've got family, they've got kids, they're the sole provider. Holy fucking shit! Like,
I also think that's about like what they've come to be ingrained on, what they have to have been focusing all this time. It's like you're being.
Well, I have something to say on that.
Yeah, like, because my family, like, I always saw us as like hardworking people. There was not a day that went by when I didn't see one of my parents, like one or the other, just because they were always working. So in my mind, I knew that I always had to be doing something. I never felt free to just waste time on just frivolous things. And if anything, like, not that it meant that I would start looking down on people who were, but I just didn't know how to value that, because it wasn't a part of my immediate value system. You're born into the society as a blank slate, and your family kind of raises you to understand, like, a value system, and every family is going to value different things.
That's a really interesting point. I want to ask real quick, and I think we could all make a point right here before moving on again, real quick. Do you think that I agree that we are blank slates, but would you happen to believe also that how our DNA, how our DNA is wired, you're predetermined a certain way?
A little.
Like, you think
I think there's some.
Okay, so like, we're not just blank slates. There's some wiring.
Yes.
We're all wired differently.
DNA is wiring you to be a certain way.
I want to get that out there. That's what I'm saying.
I have behaviors. Actually, that was my fault. Okay. I have behaviors, actions, like my voice, like the way that I act and the way that I am. It's just all been encouraged by my family. Okay, see, that's what I want to get out. That, I mean, because what if I would have been an adopted child?
Yeah.
I would have still have had all that wiring, all that DNA from my family, but maybe that family wouldn't have, they might have never understood why I was so mad, or why I was so frustrated, why I was so quiet during this moment and state of time, when everyone else that they've known in their families were the complete opposite. They would have been more communicative in a time of hardship or anything like that. So it's like, everybody has like their own little like pieces of DNA that are ingrained into them, but I think that those things are more like mechanical. So the way that you laugh, the way that you smile, the way that you process things in your mind, and like those things you'd have to spend time with somebody and actually try to understand how they, and like, or focus on like their movements, like mentally and physically and even vocally, in order to be able to say that is true. Say say that about the DNA, because I do agree with that.
It's hard to distinguish though, because a lot of people don't want you to completely get in there and be like, oh, so this is your wiring and this is your environment. Yeah.
Okay, but what value does it bring to us to establish that?
To establish which is your environment and what's your wiring? Well,
I think it's important to understand how you function. I think greater understanding of any situation and system around you and your environment allows you to perceive the truth of reality. And it's so long as you face the truth of our reality, then you can more easily, you're forced to deal with what's around you. You know, if you vegetate on the TV and your phone and video games and you don't move much, like you don't exist in the real world. You're tapping out into a virtual
world.
Exactly.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Well, that's what I love and hate about the internet is it's constructed so it's this simulacrum of reality.
But what if those experiences that aren't a part of real world could potentially enhance like the way that you come out into the real world?
Absolutely. But
I don't know how that would happen.
I think that culture is just kind of happening in spurts. Like there's all these political things that are happening that are quite apart from the technological things, and there's some parallels where like right now here's an intersection that everyone knows about right now. Huawei. In China.
And
this is the bigger producer of phones in the world.
Yes.
Huawei.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a
I heard about it in the news before I heard it on the Rogan podcast, and he brings it up all the time because he's a phone dude.
Yeah.
And so he's always talking about like Huawei's the shit, but you can't get it over here because it's like the spy device of China.
Supposedly.
But I'm not I'm not joking around. Like this company is embedded with the government. And so, like, some stuff's been uncovered. I mean, like, it's shady shit.
Yeah.
Like, there's reasons why we're doing this.
But they make really good phones.
But they make really good phones, motherfucker. That's right. That's the
idea.
Exactly.
Chinese spy phone,
but they're not allowed over here. That's the point.
Well, I mean, but people buy them all.
But that's one intersection. But largely, this shit's not
very separate.
Like, things are happening in different
The higher
levels.
up is a very ancient politician-driven other system.
I think it's much more...
is this amazing fucking spark that has ignited within the last 20 years. That's completely separate.
It is a very, and it affects the political world.
100%. Because the people that are participating in both are right in the middle.
There's certainly intersections, but most of these things, you know, they run apart from each other.
Exactly.
That's generally what I'm saying.
Oh man, but it's so difficult to incorporate one into the other. Because you can't vote on Twitter and you can't fucking...
but they all seem to affect each other to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you need someone that can kind of land in the middle, nuanced enough to kind of be able to kind of know how to deal with and be one thing to everything in order to kind of move everyone on together.
And I mean, earlier you were talking about the illusion of choice and the fact that the things we choose don't really matter, like what cereal we eat.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's largely a symptom of the systems we've put in place, like capitalism. I'm going to say the big word that people don't like to dive into.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so we brought it back. Brought it back. I see. That's where I was trying to go.
Yeah.
So continue. And
I'm just saying, capitalism is that big word that everyone's like, don't touch it. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, see, that's easy. I'm of the same mind.
Really?
And because, okay, like I have an ideal future, and then I also happen to feel that we've gotten to where we are, that we can talk about an ideal future and how we might get there from capitalism. So I see the purpose and use of it. So
it has a role.
So I'll critique it, but I'm not going to bash it to smash it down. I'm going to say, we are here now. What we can imagine the ideal world. Let's constructively talk about getting there. So, you know, universal healthcare. It's good for everybody.
It's a good idea. It's
universally. So that's why it's appealing. Pardon.
Yes.
Pardon.
But I understand that's the thing is like you can take the basic insight of something like universal healthcare and then without destroying capitalism with a bat, you'd slowly dismantle it and take this piece and incorporate it with this piece. Like
it's not shock treatment. It can be made gradual. And what you do is you have someone who's a nuanced enough leader that knows how to bridge the gap with these. People right now at this time in the system control vast amounts of money in positions of power. you have to deal with these people to sometimes, I think, move business.
Yes.
You need someone
100%.
that's willing to incentivize and aid the transfer of power from one system to another. So you need to help these people transition out of whatever systems they're engaged in. Okay?
You need somebody who can train and somebody who is capable of helping other people see the value in being trained.
Yeah.
I want
like teachers.
Yeah. So here's what I'm saying.
Like there's
you know, I like there's like okay, like the coal industry in America. That's like a really, you know.
Oh, the cult industry.
The coal.
Oh,
coal.
I thought you said coal. I thought you said coal.
I mean, it's. I think it's subsidized at this point.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's still like coal plants are going under.
The basis of energy, basically.
Right. Like I mean, and now like a small team and mostly motorized equipment controlled at a distance does most of the work. So I mean, like even the type of project has changed dramatically. Okay, technology is putting people out of jobs, not, you know, people trying to get rid of coal. That's the way it's really been going, honestly. And it's dangerous work, I'm told.
Oh yeah,
as
I'm
I've
sure.
read.
But it's like at this point currently still necessary because we haven't implemented new infrastructures to
it's been
hold that
fought,
place.
I think, for so long.
Yeah.
We could have been transitioning long before and been so
Long
much
time
further
ago.
ahead
Oh my God.
right now. Like we should
So
be
painful.
leading the world
Yeah.
in everything we do. But because there's systems of power that control resources and the markets for them and have market interest, they then have money power that they then use to leverage specific individuals who are not working for our benefit, but they're working for a interested, powered party to work against your interest.
To work against your interests?
Yes,
Yeah.
people immediately will wage war over oil. Like,
Like, why do you think it's important that like people can use like really bad fucking pesticides? People want to sell product.
and it's cheaper to.
That's why the Trump administration got rid of all these. You know, he's so proud about cutting red tape. Well, oh my God, like some of that
The
shit
red tape
protected
was
our
there.
water.
Yeah, the red tape was
Oh
there
my
for
God.
a reason. It was a rule.
Right? Like pesticides that cause like bad shit, you know, like poison your water, like all these, like some of this shit just makes sense. Like if it was your water, you'd like, holy shit, like why did I do that? But we don't get power at that level.
I mean,
That doesn't seem right.
Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water, and it's been a thing for years.
Danny said it. Danny said it. Right
and
there.
It's like there's so many thousands of people within the country who technically have the financial ability to solve an issue like that.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like you're saying, how do you get someone that is that influential to give a shit about a small city?
See, that's what I'm saying is that I would meet with, well, I mean, lobbyists is just a go-between. You have to like meet these groups, these most powerful of these interested parties. Like that's who you need to meet with in order to facilitate moving a pre-existing resource-driven energy sector into a new age where like these guys become part of the new cartel, essentially. No, I'm not sure. Like, okay, give them a fucking incentive.
Yeah.
All right? Like, that's what they're driven by, and that's what will motivate them to move their industry and transition their industry out of dirty fuels into a renewable future for America. Boom!
Renewable energy.
Killed it. That's what I'm talking about. I give a shit. Come on.
It's hard to influence these
I
people
just
if you
think
can't
that-
meet them.
That's I know. I think that's the unfortunate. That's the ideal I was talking about, though. Like, that would be an ideal. That's what I'm talking about.
I'm fine with that, but hold on, give me a second.
Okay, go for
Just
it.
because I feel like in the car you were saying that it's hard to be changed by a conversation.
It's hard to be changed against your will in a conversation. If you're willing, then you can be changed. But like without your will, if you're completely willed against being changed, it's not going to happen.
I think that like a journalist meets someone and it's like this person's just really just like gets along well with you and you want to hate them but you love them. You know, like that happens. You know, like it's people just affect like energy, vibing, right? We talked about that earlier. That happens.
Their frequency.
But it's like some people just have that power to just like clamp down and, you know, I'm set against you. Usually people that are like set to debate, especially today, like all these hot button issues, like they're just like talking mouse or aside. Like I see that a lot. And I think that
So wait, what were you asking, Cynthia?
No, well,
It's hard to be changed by
by
conversation against your will.
Conversation.
Yeah. What do you think?
About being changed by conversation?
Do you think you can be?
Well, really? That's what I was kind of talking about with her earlier, is that I feel like there's only an extent to which words accomplish things mentally. Like, it is the vehicle by which we change people's minds, but that there requires real world examples to show people first in order to ease their grip on things and be like, maybe I could have a change in heart. And so you have to create a physical manifestation of what you're trying to change before you try to convince everyone and influence them. And then by nature of your labor speaking for itself, your labor speaks to these people without words. Like, and it changes their hearts through just seeing what you've accomplished in a different direction.
I even you can go up. Mine is just something very simple about films. Like when you watch something and like a film director has like an alternate universe and he like paints like an image of love in that universe, and like you still see it like overarching everything else, you know, it kind of like it adds to our own personal profile of what love, or our own definition of what love is, and what it will continue to be, standing the test of time throughout any alternate like universe that they create, right? In the same way where like that kind of just what you were describing gave me that image of like needing something else out there, kind of painting this image of what it would be like if this person were to contribute, and then them kind of watching it and then getting themselves like into like that state and wondering like what it would be like to feel like that person who is in that power, who has the ability to change and move themselves from that place to the next, you know, and be that contribution to the world that you guys are so much entailing is necessary, you know.
Well, for me,
Michigan,
that world that you're talking about, that world that you're talking about of being like a fantasy world that's outside of us, that kind of conveys something. I feel like the concrete example is science and math. Is it's fucking otherworldly. It's amazing that we've come up with this amazing invention that's understandable amongst billions of people to cooperate and create technology. And then creating statistical examples of the things you can accomplish by cooperating with that technology together. Like, for example, replacing renewable or coal fuel completely with a solar farm the size of Spain, and you could power the entire Earth. Like, you need to show people a concrete example of how you can achieve these things with technology and resources, and paint out a road towards that, in order to truly convince them that there is a reason to even try, like, for change. If you can't prove it to them logically, they're not going to ever give you the time of day. So, like, well,
I think I wouldn't say someone would ever need to like campaign on that alone. I'm just saying that you would need someone who would need to be able to move groups of power, and that was just one example in that regard.
Yeah, we're addressing multiple things.
Right. And I feel like there's like, you'd have to like, let's say you narrow down 5 people. You'd have to like understand like what they're paying attention to, what's feeding their line of thought, and what's feeding their like whatever, like what's feeding their line of thoughts of important things to focus on important matters, like what matters to them, because obviously they're listening to something. And I mean, we're all listening to something. We're all listening to different voices in our heads that keep us feeling motivated to go back to these sources, you know, and keep us driven to value what these people are saying through those specific platforms. And I think it's very hard to say that like, I'm going to be the one who has like the platform that you're going to listen to. No. You know?
Okay.
Like,
absolutely. I want to riff on that specifically, because I think that's beautiful, because it connected with what I wanted to get at. It's something that you brought up, is that Lou and I talked in the second podcast about Jordan Peterson, and actually had I read his stuff. I like the intellectual discussion, and I like a lot of what he says about like mythic stories, because I'm a history major. It just fits in. I come from a religious background.
Jordan Peterson has valid points.
He's interesting stuff. But it's interesting, like I've heard him discuss like Jesus Christ as a metahuman figure, like a primitive superhero. And we like today, like what's the best
Avengers? It's the most highly selling
sure, but I mean,
since God.
But previous to them, what was the biggest one in America at least? Superman, right? I mean, Superman, right? It's in the name. Superman. Nice, Danny. Nice.
Me and Dev are big.
Yeah, we're Zarathustrians.
Yeah, we're big Nietzsche.
We know what's going on. We're Nietzschean.
But we have needed that example for a long time.
Right.
It just needs to get a little more concrete because our brains are getting so...
So, see, here's my thing, is that these are new worlds and new realities that have been created in our more recent future. And then in movies and other forms of media, we've extrapolated older stories. Like we're retelling like the Arthur story is retold in one of the most recent Transformer movies. I think,
Bumblebee?
Right? No, the one before.
Oh, no, right? Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, fucking,
you know what I'm saying? Like Merlin was at it. Yeah. But I'm saying like stories are retold now also, right?
Yes, I've even seen some like that are from like Greek mythology, like in the song or in this movie called The Girl with the Song or something like that. From the song.
All sorts of movies are told in new context today, and they're periodically retold
because we find new uses.
Right, and they tell these stories tell something to us.
Right, but then that means that you, as the person who's trying to accomplish this one goal, you have to identify the kinds of stories that these particular people that you are trying to reach need in order to be able to see this perspective of yours that you feel like would be valuable for them if they were to be able to come to their senses about what it would be like to be able to be using their money in such ways.
See, that's exactly where Jordan Peterson's example would say, where I think he has kind of a Christian background himself, and so he views certain value structures. Like I think he dismisses. Is the thing maybe is it Islam?
Oh yeah, he's very. He has a couple of moments.
So for example, where it's like, okay, so he has some definite no's. Like this is not useful for our furthering and our advance and our moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And so he has some definite yes and no's. And so what again, that you hit it on the head. What do you need to build an individual person that is themselves an ideal that is achievable for other people to be moved by this person? So you're basically creating a metahuman in yourself. And what is that? An aesthetic ideal, which is Nietzsche, which is from Genealogy of Morals. The third book, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So
check that out. It's a really good section. I think it deals on the artist and the saint. It goes on to creative types, and there's several that he goes over. But the aesthetic ideal is what I'm going to get to, and because aesthetic ideals are realized every day in natural life, whereby someone is reborn spiritually. Right? They literally enter into a new spiritual state and their life changes. That is an aesthetic ideal.
This is something I blew her mind with earlier.
Okay.
The idea of entering into a spiritual stage of life is always, he has this idea of events and being faithful to an event that puts you into that spiritual path.
Or
Nietzsche has a huge focus on
and so
faithful to an event.
There's this thing. There's suicide, you kill yourself, or there's philosophical suicide, which is the turn to God. Otherwise, you're kind of you're damned in between denying God in most cases. That's what most people see. I interpret the world in a different way, so I'm not bothered by all that stuff. It's not an issue for me. I just got off the system that I was raised in, and so I was able to make do in the world I lived in because I had to live, and that was it.
But it's possible to find other gods.
But I mean, I had that background, so certain stories always spoke to me.
They resonate.
And so, here's my thing: like the golden rule. Like I felt mistreated. I think people identified. Like it's so fucked up that like I didn't understand like what I was for a long time, but other people seem to naturally have a disposition to not like me for no discernible reason that I could understand.
I feel you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. No, thank you very much.
I'm really liking this high five. Can I high five?
There you go.
Everybody's high fiving but me.
So as you were saying, that there's a natural inclination for people to kind of mistreat you.
No, that's just an
well,
example.
I mean, that's what it seemed like.
And so I always liked, for example, I mean, to get back to the religion part, always liked the golden rule as like a way, like that's the best way to treat people. So that should be an ideal. And I kind of always still feel that, like, that's a really good one to go by. Like, I teach my kids that. Like, that's
simple too.
That's super simple, right?
Again, yes,
right? Like, that is so simple.
And I think that ties into something that I like most like ingrainedly like believe that we as human beings are very forgetful. And it's very hard to keep ourselves aligned to the things that matter most, but at the same time not so really. Because even if we don't align with the things that we think are good for us, like I think it's good for me to be exercising every day. I think it's good for me to be always drinking water, never drinking soda. I think it's good for me to like go outside and like meet up with people and just like go outside of my comfort zone, right? Fall off a plane at some point. I don't know. It'll be fun. We'll see. But the thing is that it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing all those things. And I think it's because we sometimes get consumed with the narratives that we focus on in our minds that don't give us the opportunity to just like realign ourselves so much more quickly as like the golden rule might, or like that moment could just bring you out from like your own like spiraling loop in your head and just be like, treat yourself the way that you would like somebody else to be treated, you know? And
or
like
treat people how you would like to be treated.
Oh, treat
yourself how you would like to be treated.
Well, did I say that? I don't remember what I said.
That was the
we know
anyway,
yeah, I
understand.
Rule.
I just feel like treat people good, you know, and treat people right. And like if you don't necessarily like just decide to give yourself like the good things that you need and the good things that everybody deserves, then you're constantly falling back into anything but that. And so I think keeping it simple with statements like that, like the golden rule, bring you out of yourself. And I think that's also why I appreciate musicians and artists who focus on positive narratives, or like show themselves like going from like what they've been to what they're trying to be, or like how they're trying to keep themselves like focused on like what's good for them, like however difficult it might be. I think it just like highlights like yes, the humanity in ourselves, but also just like it gives us like a brighter light towards the positive side, that's like, yes, like we might not want to do the right things and we might want to focus on anything but the good thing for ourselves, but if we do give ourselves like the opportunity to say what we want, or to act and behave in ways that are good for ourselves, then it'll be much more better for everyone else too.
Yeah, so that's what that's everything I encourage. And everything I look at, that there's some people that seem to help facilitate everyone to kind of just be the best. We need honest leaders in society. We need to recognize that, you know, like we were talking about with management, we'd rather have managers work with us as a team than have us work under a team.
So there seems to be a need for simple, like mantra, like
like life could be simpler. You know, like it's almost
work
like
with us, not above us. Like things like that, where you just keep it to a few short sentences.
Yeah, like society could do with being more integrated. Honestly, you know, like I'm not saying we need to just like sit around the campfire and do, you know, kumbaya or whatever. You know,
but it's obvious that
community of that level would be ideal. So like that could be an ideal. I'm not saying we need to jump that right now. What I'm saying is that there's small movements that we could make to get somewhere. And I think talking about these smaller things are important.
Yeah.
And so my point is that the golden rule was a thing for me. And it's not like I remembered him or loved him well, but like Jesus Christ I always thought was like a pretty incredible ideal. Like, you know, this person who suffered through so much and also gave so much before, and visited the needy and the sick, and hung out with, you know, the kind of untouchable or, you know, or unwashed. That's an incredible type of human being, I think, as an ideal, and I recognize that for that. And so maybe that I held on to the ideal, not the man growing out of religion. And so I think like that maybe that's what why my lens for looking at the homeless is different, because that was an ideal that I definitely like built over it for a long time, but parts of it I think were kind of still near the surface, and so I'm getting more of that these days, where I'm falling back on that kind of stuff.
It's an ideal that people should definitely keep in mind, but I have a feeling that people are way more human and imperfect now.
We were talking about like earlier about the homelessness issue, and like we just talked to everyone what the kind of responses would be, and that same thing. Only so many people would see that ideal we're talking about just as an idea and wouldn't go for it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think like a whole bunch of America was like, yeah, I was raised that way, or I'm doing that now in some regard, or I'm totally into that. Sign me up. You got me. Like you can actually get a fair amount of people. So maybe you need to be that and other things. Maybe you also need like some sort of, I mean, in no way fake. I mean, maybe like some connection with different communities. You need to be all things to all people. If I may, guys, Octavian Caesar. Octavian Caesar. After Julius, he's the first, like, next big ruler for significant time after the triumvirate. He ruled as a principate. He kind of ruled with all these titles and roles stacked up, and it was made legal for him to rule, as I understand it. He was seen to be legitimate in every right, even if he was a dictator.
Okay.
So he was a legitimate tyrant, a prince. And so he was able to be, like, he didn't say, for example, let's say, honestly believe the gods are real. To really have, like, for his understanding of history and philosophy and high political struggle, I mean, that steered the course of Western civilization with his ascension and rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
His
in the big
distinction
time.
between
Yeah.
the status quo.
So his impact is huge, I would argue. And
so that's the thing, is it's another example of an aesthetic ideal that you would think is healthy to strive for. Like,
well, what I mean to say, yeah, that's exactly, well,
you don't
yes,
think
I
it
would
would make other people feel uncomfortable?
How so?
Yeah, I would recognize yes that first, but I want to respond to that and finish my thought, and then I would jump into that. It is an aesthetic ideal, what I'm getting to, and what I mean with him is he was able to not believe in the gods as the popular citizens did, but he's able to play the role of an anointed ruler, of this higher person. He's able to, be a being of power. He was a centralization of religious and political power.
But
in a person, he was not, say, an ideal like Jesus Christ later.
Yeah.
But he was made an ideal by the power of the state and various spiritual authorities. That's what I mean.
Okay.
So power is conveyed. Like, Donald Trump sold steaks before he was the president.
Yes.
You get what I mean?
Yes. But, like, how uncomfortable it might be for some people to even try to progress towards something like that. Like, that takes a lot
That's a religion that you're trying, it's like
it's outside of most people's scope of what they think is possible, it seems like.
I think it certainly is. I think
so
people are hugely limited.
Yeah,
I think people are hugely limited.
But then that also means that it has to be very thought through, and like, I mean, it takes people a lifetime, to develop like their ideas, and actually feel certain of themselves, of the things that they think of, the things that they value, and the way that they've come to value them. And like, not to say that we, like, you or us, even by being a part of whatever you end up wanting to do, would be imposing on these people, right? But some people don't know how to bring in new ideas. Like, it's
certainly,
not,
I know
like,
that.
that's not something that's second nature to them, because the only thing that's gotten them to be where they're at, right, like
is
where
what
they're
they've
at,
done.
is to preserve those the ideas that they have and the values that they've come to believe in. And it's just gonna take it feels like it'll take a lot. not just time though, it takes certain kinds of people who are almost like the Mother Teresas of like the world to be able to move people to see like the value it would be to sacrifice their own values momentarily to bring up the morale and the values of somebody else who might not have them themselves quite yet. Or they have their own values, but their values are leading them down a path of personal self-destruction physically, aging wise, and just like their overall like environmental health. Nothing is good for them. So we as people who can see that we are good, you know, like we can recognize what might not be good for us, you know, and if we see other people who are doing those kinds of things, yeah, we can recognize that like something needs to be done, but then to get ourselves to cut a bit off of our own good for ourselves, the little that we do have, to give it to somebody else and boost them up, that's very hard for some people.
Absolutely. I think our whole life here is built on privation. Like, we barely make enough to get by, honestly. So this whole federal shutdown is proving that. Like, all these people, like lots of people who are in a lot of pain right now because they have to live paycheck to paycheck, because that's how life kind of is in America.
There are tons of social organizations that exist today that are selling things like bracelets, because obviously they need something that's like, that has nothing to do with like just you handing over money, because people need to believe that they're getting something out of it, you know, something physical. And even though people know when they see the bracelet, like this bracelet means nothing to me, like I'm not like, am I really going to be like wearing a bracelet that keeps promoting what you're doing? No, because I only care about things that promote the things that I want for myself. Again, very self-centered like thinking. And I'm not saying that everybody is like this, but I think the far majority of us are. And I think it's just because of the way that we're socialized into this world, believing that we have to be able to take care of ourselves, and that we have to be able to like defend our own, push our own carriage. Yes, self-sufficient. Yeah. And that's not promoted in every culture. It's not something. Obviously, there's communistic cultures. There's even, if you go to Mexico, like I can sense the difference between being in a big city and watching the way that people walk and the way that they move, the things that drive them and move them forward, versus my own family that's in Mexico, and just what drives them to be and how they like to be who and how they are in that moment. And like it's just something that I think needs to be addressed.
Well, I mean, that's what needs to be addressed, like you were saying, is that we as a society have come to glorify self-sufficiency and independency and our own opinions, but we've lessened our value in community and actual collectivism and cooperation. And so we have to move slowly back towards being a collective and not so individualistic.
Because I know that Hispanic cultures in general, they are very collectivistic. And like but I didn't grow up around that. Like it's very interesting for me to be somebody who is a part of the culture, but not.
Yeah, I'll come back in and we'll talk. I'm going to use the restroom real quick, but I'm going to bring up WASP when we come back in.
Okay.
But like you're saying, this is something specifically that we're just going to keep going, because we're both Latinos. So.
Hey, me too.
But basically, America is the one example of a place where people are removed from their cultures but still immersed in it. So we're all kind of cultural babies that don't get to experience any of that culture. So we're kind of given a version of it. It's a version of it. It's not like the authentic, complete Mexican culturalism, but it's a version of it that is given to us by our parents.
Yes and no, though. Okay, so when I was bringing it up, I was trying to point out that I have family in clusters in Northern California. I have family in clusters in Colorado, Arizona. And it's just, wow, nice. Hey.
Literally all three places you said. Same, okay.
But I am straight up like, it's just me and one other cousin down here. It's completely different.
Yeah.
Everybody else over there is more like, you know, like it's very collectivistic. Somebody's babysitting somebody else's kid kind of deal.
Okay.
I'm not babysitting anybody.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, it's not like
you feel removed from it for the most part?
Extremely removed.
Yeah.
And like to the point where like other people have been able to like notice a difference in like the way that I think, in the way that I behave, in the way that I desire things, because I didn't grow up seeing as much necessity as they might have, kind of deal.
Okay.
Like there wasn't as much, like I'm not really so sure like about everybody's situation. Like definitely all of us like coming over here to America because of our parents, I think like we are in an advantageous point, like because we got to go to school, we got to develop our language skills.
We lucky enough to get
we
the
can have jobs.
Yeah,
we're employable people.
We're not picking strawberries right now.
Yes.
We're lucky enough to work
Right.
at a cheesecake factory.
Right, things like that. Like it's like I get that like we're in some way like privileged beyond like the measures of our previous generation that had to like fight their way to a country that could give them more opportunity, because the opportunities in Mexico were scraps.
Yeah.
And like that's, while that's valuable and whatnot, like I was just trying to point out that like it's just different, because I don't feel like I even understand what it would be like to be in a collectivistic like environment.
It's hard to picture.
I understand that it exists. I understand that it exists, but I do not understand like what it would feel like, because I don't even think that I can accept it.
Yeah.
Or that I can like be a part of it, because I'm so on my own, doing my own thing all the time, always having my own ideas, constantly moving forward because of my own like predispositions, because of the way that I've been raised, isolated, away from everything else.
From everything. I'm going to use the restroom. Are you guys cool with that?
All right, sure.
Where is the restroom?
It's going to be, use this key to enter.
Okay.
It's going to be the first door on the left, not in the
Outside?
hallway, not when you
okay.
enter.
Okay.
In the
so
hallway.
Enter the house.
Yeah.
First door on the left.
Yeah.
All right.
And don't forget to lock the door.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
First door on the left.
Chill on the couch for a second while we continue our conversation. Where are you guys at right now?
I was just telling him how I just like we were just bringing up that about the collectivistic families, right? Or like collectivistic.
More communal culture.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't
I'd say
feel
Latino
like
culture fits in the local area for SoCal. For those listening elsewhere, guys, I'd say in Orange County in particular, Latino culture or Mexican culture around here is the biggest example of that. I'd say.
Yeah.
Also, I had an opportunity to work with some people in the Vietnamese community. I'd have to say that I think Vietnamese culture is kind of the same way. It's more family oriented. So I think that's another local one. I'm not sure if there's any other large communities in this area that I would cite like that. I think probably.
I think you practically covered it for now.
Mexican
I'm not really,
culture,
I'm not really
biggest one.
familiar with that many beyond.
But I mean,
Vietnamese.
but that's what I was going to get into with WASP is that, let's say early century, like 20th century America, like 50 years ago, like you would say like whites were poster for America, right?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Like that's definitely changed to today, right? At one point, America was a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? There was a certain background that was like staple American ideal,
Sure.
if you could say at one point. I think that made up a lot of people. Like they say that like some people were uncomfortable with Kennedy because he was Catholic.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there's definitely like some feeling that there's a certain group that held a big sway at some point. That was the ideal of America at some point.
Well, that always exists. It's always the case. It's just, I think that like everything has its time for different reasons, and like I even think that fundamentally it comes from our own personal self-discoveries of the things that we need to be focusing on for ourselves, and then once we start turning into those pages or trying to like delve into like what it means to us to be valuing certain things in certain ways, we start running across different social cultures, different cultures that have been putting that at the forefront of theirs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No,
like,
absolutely.
like
I have a point that meets that, yeah.
Even like watching the show Empire, like it focuses a lot on family and love, and like while everything does involve around like the black culture, there are fundamental elements that everybody can still find something that they could connect to, especially if they're trying to, if their minds have been a lot more focused on those two two aspects.
Yeah.
And then they even obviously delve into, as a show, into like more like into like what activism like would look like, right, amongst like that kind of culture that they have per se. And so I think that it just comes from our own personal self-discovery and trying to recognize what we value and honing down into those things, because we need to be consuming information or external ideas to help give us feedback as to what is better than the other, to keep promoting in our own self-conscious and our own awareness of what makes us feel good, like we're good.
Yeah, I have to agree. You've got to play the games in the real world, I think, to become a better human being. This is kind of what we were touched on when we first started, about how being in the service environment at our level, for example, it's a higher stress environment where we're more challenged. I think this is something we covered in the podcast with Ivan, Rob, and Kaylin.
Okay.
That, and this is a term in a book I heard, that, we are the great souled. The stress has kind of built an inner struggle and a tension that allows us to kind of perceive others.
Okay.
That's what I want to say. That gives us an introspective ability. I want to say allows us to kind of look at people and systems, perhaps.
Okay. Recognizing our own struggle and the things that we're going through and things that we're trying to identify.
Yeah. Kind
of makes us more human, and then being able to empathize with other people and their struggles.
Yeah. So then we can read them. Right. So
but is it really just about reading other people? I
think there's genuine connections, and I think reading them is another thing. Learning how to also be adaptive and being able to work with other people is another thing. Being strong-willed is another. Like, I tested my will serving. That's like I went from being a nobody to someone who could do anything I needed to do. And so,
in what regard, though?
At certain times, I mean, anything. Just depends on what the situation required. I wanted to touch on the point you brought up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Try not to forget your point.
I'll try not to. I think it's gone.
No, don't say it.
No, it was... Okay, no, what I wanted to go back to for a minute, because you brought it up and it got me going, was... pardon me, it's like right on the tip of my tongue.
I even forgot mine.
Yeah.
Sorry, you guys.
Damn it. Yeah, I hate that.
Totally went low.
See, that's where we needed our third person.
Okay, where were we?
Oh, no, what it was? It was, we were still on, like, WAS. I wanted to bring WAS into the communal system thing, because I feel like that was simply the dominant kind of category of person in America for a long time. And I think in competition with the rest of America and the changing demographics, that system, even though it's existed in certain forms over a long period of history, because it is a kind of an ethnic group and a religious background, that's you get what I mean?
Okay.
And group that's here now in America, right? That exists now. Like, that group is having less success now. That's only what I mean. But it's a perceived, like, worse issue than it really is.
Okay.
Something could move these people as a group, but they're a widespread group today.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
But how do you...
I'm sorry.
Are you trying to, like...
I want to say that
we can solve it?
If you recognize there is a problem or an illness, perhaps, let's say if you want to use a medical term.
Okay, yeah, we could do it like that.
Then you might look at alternative solutions, not the standard medication, perhaps. You might look to a different medicine. You might look to other cultural systems to fix your own, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, like, for someone, last person I dated, their mom was like a big proponent of like Eastern familial relations, like 3 generations or more are like connected in the household sometimes.
And I think that people promote their own familial structures because it's what's gotten them to live thus far, like...
I think, but we should be, in today's world, if you're willing to, accept technology and take, like, high-tech medicine, then, like, shouldn't be able to, like, inhabit a different frame of mind. Shouldn't you, like, enter that possibility that, like, you should be able to entertain another frame of thought. But that is super
Yes,
hard.
but
That's
it's
super hard.
very
I'm
because
recognizing that. I'm recognizing that.
it's
Absolutely.
like it's so hard to entertain someone else.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to knock that or your point at all. Or your the strength, your passion for that.
else.
What I want to just get out. What I want to get out is that would be. What do you got?
I'm just distracting you. Can we eat blueberries?
Yeah, go for it. Those are antioxidant, guys. They're good for you.
It's
They're
like
good.
wine. It's like wine.
What you want to do, actually, guys, is you want to heat them up in hot water. The flavor comes out a lot better.
Interesting.
Warm. Yeah, it's a thing.
Not boil them, but just
No, like just faucet hot water.
Yeah,
strain
okay,
it.
I see.
Yeah, like you're gonna clean them anyways.
Yeah, I mean, we should have cleaned those, but
Yeah.
they're not cleaned. Whatever.
Well, you've got strong
it's
gut
like rubbing dirt in a wound.
microbes. So
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh wow.
All right.
Yeah.
So what were we covering? What were we covering?
True story. There's like a whole host. There's an
Oh, you
there's
got a
stuff going on
forest
there.
in your stomach.
Yeah, there's stuff going on, girlfriend. We could talk about that.
So what did we cover?
We got to we're straight. I got onto wasps.
Okay, wasps.
White Anglo-Saxon
Oh.
Protestant.
Oh, I love this
Like
concept.
mainstream
Yes.
American culture at one point
Yes,
that was dominant.
yes.
But what I'm trying to get to is that competition and the breakup of that group, I think, and other white groups. A competition with other groups emerging in America have changed the landscape over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should be looking at what systems, cultural systems work, and start to look at what society as a whole can do to facilitate the success of the individuals in these systems.
Mm-hmm.
So that maybe we can instead funnel these individuals out of a strictly familial structure into maybe a national citizen kind of structure.
Yeah.
A communal structure nationwide.
Or even transnational.
That's what I mean. I want to unite the world. That's my end goal.
Because I feel like nationalism specifically has been steered into a different direction than what it could be used for, you know?
It could be used for the good
And
of the
so,
people rather than the benefit of the few.
Progressively, we should be looking beyond just a nation and into the whole organism of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like the idea of Gaia as a whole, like this Mother Earth being that is all of us, and we're just microbes living on her. Like it's just it encapsulates the idea that we're all connected.
I think a lot of people get in touch with God through an understanding of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think very science-minded people kind of can be in touch with God
through their
like they understanding of physics and space-time and all that. You know, like they're like for things to work like this. It's not like, oh, I believe in God, but I got you perceive the universe in your mind through your actual understanding of it. That is
I can't recall
absolutely
who,
incredible.
but there was a quote of like, tell me what
incredible.
You define as God and I'll tell you whether or not I believe in it. It's because it's such a widespread term that represents so much variety in everyone's minds. And like, to me, it's become that the main connection for what people define as God is the connectivity of everything in the universe and how everything is really a relationship to one another. Like, that they are symbiotic and you can't have one without the other kind of a thing. But there's a lot of other definitions of I am the perfect being, so I am God kind of a thing.
I think literal translations are dangerous.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they're literal. That's why there needs to be such a variety in terms of what people interpret it as, because literal, one-dimensional, like we have this as our God, is so dangerous.
And someone, I remember hearing someone on, I think, Rogan's podcast bring this up, and I had a similar thought for a long time. And this is back when I had a much stricter reactionary view on a lot of things. But now I see it in a different light. But like, right now, citizenship is well expanded to all people at the age of 18.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And some people can argue, well, you've really got no place to make decisions still.
Oh, I see.
Honestly speaking.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like,
yeah. I see what you're saying.
As young people that are not that old.
Can't drink till you're 21, but you can vote at 18.
Yeah, but but you don't know dog shit.
Yeah.
Like when you're 18, you're still a fucking kid.
But
yeah, you go. Okay, some people.
There are a lot of people who go through the shit very early
but
on.
I mean,
that's the thing.
But you're not then equipped to make political decisions. That's what I'm saying. That doesn't come until later. And then, honestly, you want someone probably more balanced to make those choices.
Yeah.
But then I'm sure going through this shit can also give you a good, sense of judgment too.
And like
but
I said,
you
giving
need
a
time
voice
for
to
that.
the people that need
I don't
it.
think like you're probably equipped to vote until mid-20s, probably.
And there's a lot of different opinions on what equipped is.
I wouldn't ask people to fight and die. That's my
difference.
That's
the thing, yeah.
So it's like, okay.
But imperialism's like, oh, you're 18, go for it. Start shooting at people.
I just think that all it requires is for people to be educated on like the political systems that they are already a part of.
Yes, and so that's if
you're automatically already associated, if you're not alien to every country that you're in, which you obviously aren't, if you're born into one, that means you're born into a system.
Yeah. And you've been
subject you need to be helped, to be taught to go along with the system. I think not even
to go along with. Okay, yeah, maybe.
See that we go back to that freedom issue because we have the freedom of choices, but no actual freedom, and so
there's freedom in knowing how to make a choice in the system.
You're frustrated in the system. Like, that's what I think. I think that people they're crushed by the unfairness of the system of capitalism, and some people want to tear it down right now. Some people want to tear it down right now.
Yes.
Some people are championing it. Some people don't give a shit because they're making the money.
Yeah,
that's how the board is skewed right now.
Okay. Like the closest example that I've got, and that I feel like would bring it a little more home for me at least, is expressing how we view the educational system, and like going like as somebody who feels like, as a human being, they're not there yet. They can't quite decide on what they're trying to do and what path they're trying to take for a major when you go to a school. And like you go to school, and then you don't feel like it's fair that it's going to cost you so much money and all this time and all this energy for you at the end of the day to end up having to like change your course of direction of like what you were trying to initially do in the first place. And like I just felt like it hit very home with like what you were like saying about like wanting to like go against the system, and then just like, no, I'm gonna figure it out my own way, and then you're just kind of like working against the system that already is there in place to help serve you get closer to what you were trying to do for yourself in the first place. So like I get with what you're saying about like learning how to work with a system to help like promote the things that you already want for yourself like in the future, instead of constantly trying to pinpoint everything that's like wrong with it and then never feeling like you could do anything about it because you're just stuck in that thought process that like, this isn't getting me to where I want to be fast enough kind of deal. And like I think it just comes from a lack of education growing up and not being able to recognize how you can use like this kind of schooling or this way of like processing things to your benefit in the future, and then not being prepared enough to be able to like handle those systems in the same way. Like I don't feel like growing up I was raised to understand enough about our political the political side or the political systems that exist. Like we're taught history, but like but it's like it's taught in a way where it became purposeless. Like it was just very like, I know that it exists. I get that the history of the world exists. I get that the history of politics exists for a reason, right? Like, and I get that, but it's not, I don't think that the way that we've gone about it is enough to make a child understand how to develop their own ideas and how to develop their own mind and develop their own ways of thinking while simultaneously recognizing the ones that exist around them and being able to like kind of like meld those two together.
Synthesize.
Yeah.
So I have a comment on that issue.
From when I was growing up like that.
The education system's a great example. I want to say. I think for one, how we teach people is really important because I think we need to consider all aspects of their development. I love that there's art schools where certain kids with certain things that are honed in them or are natural or given right talents for can be stoked and brought out, and they have an environment that they will excel in ideally, and that's great. I love that. I think more of that would be ideal. But here's another issue. What are we educating people, our future citizens and producers? What are we educating them for?
Like what are
what are we?
what's the
What
value?
is? What
like,
are
what
we?
are the values
What
that...
value are we investing in our citizens? So far, there's nothing.
Yeah, it's basically just to become a money maker.
That's you.
A business
You have
major.
a freedom of choice. That's what I'm saying. Like there's free will, but how?
But I
how
think it's
far
because a
does
lot
that
of people
extend?
argue that I think a lot of people try to
Right.
argue though that it's like you, like that's the part of the choice, like that you get to learn. It's like your free will to learn the things that you value, to recognize the things that you want to be a part of, and to then find your way to like keep having that, like make that a part of your life, like good or bad, you know. If you are somebody who has become so interested in drinking day and night and it's something that you want to do, you can do that.
You can become a bartender. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying
yeah.
I'm not saying become a
But-
bartender.
But
I'm saying like straight up.
there
like,
are
doing-
roles for that to pursue whatever you find interest in.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that like the way that the idea of like free will comes from your ability to just choose that way of life. It's like that's you. That might be what you perceive as happiness, even though if we all out from the outside recognize that that obviously isn't going to be what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Just because of all these other schools of thought that we've chosen to accept in our own personal lives, in our own personal sense of self-concept, and like what makes us feel good, and like we're on the pursuit of our own happiness.
Well, I mean, the
what
schools
we
of thought that
value.
we follow now in education tend to just breed us to become business-minded and like
'Cause everything is a
utility-minded.
business.
Yeah, but
Everything
there's
is
still, I believe,
transactional,
there's value in learning
even through
trades,
influence.
like fishing or something. Like there are, while it is becoming less
I
and
shake
less
my head,
prevalent,
Okay.
it is still like a necessary craft to learn how to do things physically in the world, like fishing, for example,
Right.
outside of just being a business-minded individual that can make statistics grow. And
But I think that just honestly for me that comes from a place of recognizing that your mind might get tired of the way that you keep processing things the same way. Our minds like to be challenged, our minds like to be changed, our minds like to see something new and to like experience something different. So if I'm constantly crunching numbers every single day and night, I'm gonna want to go out fishing.
yeah,
I'm gonna enjoy that because that changes like my perspective and it puts me in a completely alternate environment, and I'm gonna want to see something different because of it.
Maybe that's hitting the nail on the head, and that's kind of what I'm getting to, is that we need to build a society where we are, one, able to pursue points of interest and perhaps be able to then change those courses upon the whims. And ideally, we might be able to be guided by our decisions by this point, or those who are also helping us along the way. But we can be guided towards certain roles or ideals that we wish to pursue. Now, that's one aspect that I want to bring up. Now, second, I think that we need to offer some means by which to serve the country. This is what I was bringing up earlier, is that some sort of national service. Like, you could serve perhaps in the military and get a better return.
okay.
It may be various service would get you different returns for my part. Let me check this real quick.
Oh, uh-oh.
Like no, I don't.
You can probably just edit them together, basically. Though.
Yeah. So
There'll be
we
a
should
small
fine.
gap.
Yeah.
There'll be a small gap, but you can
Yeah.
edit them together.
Yeah, something interrupted us for a second, but we're all good.
Damn software updates. Oh, guacamole. We got chips over there.
Chips.
We're gonna get a little loud with the chips, but that's
Hey, that's
okay.
good, guys. That's good.
Sorry.
So, where was? Remind me real quick.
Basically, creating a service.
national
Yeah, a
service.
national service.
Okay, so we have a volunteer army today. It's a cash incentive. Yeah, patriotism gets a lot of people in.
Yeah.
But I mean, money's also what it is, right?
Oh, 100%.
Right? I mean,
They get a
A
pension
little
for
spicy.
life.
That's what I'm saying. Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Here,
So I'm all for the vets.
yeah.
Like I'm completely. and
My
I think
grandpa
it's-
was one, and I'm
I
like,
think
cool,
it's,
but also.
I think it's awful how they've always gotten the shaft. I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm all for them. I'm all for that. Okay, I'm all for taking care of them.
But it
doing
does
right
need
by
to
them
take in
and-
a different form. In
Yes,
the future.
I mean, Veterans Affairs is a whole different issue, but I think it needs to be like those are whole different issues. Okay, Oh shit, didn't mean to go down this road.
National service.
National service, okay.
I got
Thank you very much. So, with that could also be for example, on say maybe a localized or state localized level, we've had a large issue of wildfires that have caused billions, I'm thinking, in damages at this point.
Thousands of people's homes.
And let's say they've happened periodically, but now, let's be honest, with a drier climate due to drought, at least if nothing else, let's just admit that it's drier here. We're having not enough growth removed, more fire-prone conditions. So we're expecting more of this, right? Okay, let's create a statewide service then. Okay, whereby someone in a where such a task would be something which is regularly attended to by someone who is, I wouldn't say conscripted, but I mean, like, they sign into service basically. Much, maybe not in, to some degree, like the military. I mean, like,
but
to where they have
more,
like,
more passive and less imperialistic version.
Yes, but like, okay,
we
like,
plant trees instead of shooting innocents.
Right.
But
that's someone that's obligated that's contractually obligated to be an ideal, to live an ideal. There's a chain of command by which they're held accountable to an ideal.
But then that's not, I don't feel like that's like, I mean, I guess that's their choice, right? If they like the idea of going into that, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I think is really
I'm like,
great.
right?
Look at the countries that have had to have mandatory military service, and their societies are pretty cohesive, right?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you call cohesive, because people with when you say mandatory military service, my mind immediately jumps to Israel.
I know, and another one I think is maybe Finland, and I know those are very like specific, right?
Yes,
well,
Finland's
different reasons,
exactly.
but I'm recognizing.
But Israel is such a cohesive internally state amongst its own believers that are ingrained into the military, but that cohesion requires such sacrifice, not sacrifice, but
I'm not. What I want to promote
has large
is
consequences
both,
on.
I'm not trying to say we should be that cohesive. I think we should have something deeper that binds more of us together.
Oh yeah,
that's what I'm trying to say. And so, I got to, on a very, very, very basic level, I got to enjoy junior lifeguards on Huntington Beach in my teen years.
Oh yeah,
and that was an extraordinary opportunity where, like, the same,
connects you to other people that
are like people that you wouldn't normally deal with. Like, you're all.
Is it possibly a storage issue? Do you have more storage on this?
Well, we should have more storage. We should be fine.
Okay. But I mean, yeah, there's nothing wrong with like a passive military-like organization, but as long as it's not involving the active oppression of like other people. That's what you're not envisioning. I'm not envisioning
that at all.
But it's the real-world examples that exist now that are in people's heads, because as soon as people like of a Palestinian descent hear something like conscription, they're like, "Oh God!"
No, I wouldn't. No.
Exactly.
This is a completely different concept, different words. I'm not thinking that at all. What I'm thinking is something more like. Like an advanced form of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I mean,
no, I completely agree.
Like something like you would grow up enjoying or would like to, be part of these things.
My sister's an EMT, and the way she describes the community of it, it seems like an adult Boy Scouts, but are based around saving people's lives. And like that's such a positive example of something like that, where it's an elected, you choose to go into it, but you're also getting paid to do it because it's a profession. And it's based around community and like understanding where you are and how people act there so that you can treat them properly, because she lives in Flagstaff, Arizona, and there's a large native population there, and amongst the population that they get calls for drunk people being passed out on the road is the native population. So having a key understanding of your community is such a role in that organization of EMTs and paramedics and stuff, that it's like that, where you have to be connected and cohesive together.
And because, and I like that you bring up that point, and because I was saying earlier that it's very difficult to say from like this, like from the scratch, saying like, I'm going to be the one with the ideas and who's going to create these kinds of environments. recognizing that some of these things already exist.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like some of these things might maybe not exactly in alignment with the way that you have like or you're wanting to plan, right? Could benefit your idea.
Yeah,
right?
you can get an insight from it.
Not just insight. You don't need any more intel. You already know what you want. It's about like recognizing that these people value a similar structure that you value. Hence, you've already got like a connection with them because of that. Because it's an easier access point to being able to
accomplish what you're
envisioning because they value that, you know, and so that means that it makes it a lot more easier on your plan to become more feasible. Because if you keep trying to alienate yourself and saying that these people aren't like me, these people aren't doing the exact thing the same way that I want them to be doing it because I have my plan, and if we don't do it like this, it's not going to happen. I think that it opens up your plan to realizing that this is going to be possible because all of these ideas that I have, I'm recognizing them in the world around me, and hence now it's just a matter of time and me communicating all the other things that they might not have been focusing on within those communities to be able to make these ideas become a conversation within them. Because it was hard for me to envision like. It felt like we were coming up with a fucking religion, to be honest. Like, like we were trying to like come up with like the answer and like, yes, be the image behind it, and then on top of that, like trying to almost brainwash people who had nothing to do with any of it, right? People who clearly don't see what we see it. But if you start to realize that other people out there and other structures might have similar like features and make other people feel more comfortable and more a part of it already. You know, it's kind of like it makes it easier for it to be a movement because they start to see a reflection of themselves and the way that they work and the way that they live and the things that they focus on in your ideas or in your brand or in your movement.
That's kind of what I said, where like someone would have to be of like immense rarity, I think, to fit that, be all things to all people. That's what I'm saying. And we touched and I think you commented on this subject at work about the podcast with Ivan, and I was trying to get down the rare individual road. That nature brings up, and so like that's what I'm saying is that it. Like these individuals appear throughout time, I think, as fate delivers them. That
can reveal new parts of things that people can.
Like deliver new insight, and you know, are themselves figures of change, and for good or ill. I mean, the current president is one person who has destabilized the system.
And the beauty of those rare individuals is that they're not born in a test tube. They're a product of their environment. So by them being a product of their environment, you can begin to see the necessity of the good and bad of the environment for you to truly take into consideration to create a new idea or a new vision for things to change in the future. Is you might have to be raised in the shit in order to become a rare individual. It doesn't always need to be he was perfectly crafted in this line of politicians. Exactly. So, man, I feel like we got to a relatively cathartic conclusion.
Cathartic?
I love the word catharsis. I think it's valuable.
I think so too.
But
I think that state is powerful. It's useful.
Do you guys have anything else that you want to...
Do you want to call it?
I feel like we've reached a healthy point.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we can, like, just relax.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully you'll be able to edit together the slight...
Oh, no, that's no problem. That's no issue. Don't worry.
Yeah, sorry. That was...
Okay.
That's Cynthia's aura.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. Okay.
You know what? That's a good point. You should watch out.
Yeah, Cynthia, don't touch that.
If I may, do you guys have, like a name on Instagram or anything you want to flag right now while we're still on?
So, on Instagram, it's hard to spell, because my last name's hard to spell. But... it's pronounced Aguirre. So it's Agireaguirre. It's just like the phonetic way to say my name and my last name. So, I don't know. I make shitty art, post it online. Yeah. Cynthia? You don't have anything? Any socials?
Social media list, you guys.
Oh, a
But-
hermit.
Gangster.
She's like, my phone number is.
She's a ninja.
But if anyone wants to talk,
Don't
you
put your
know
phone
that
number out there.
I exist in the world.
Oh, okay,
If you
yeah,
run
yeah.
into me,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm somebody who's always open for conversation. And for those of you who don't know me, like I'm pretty up for anything. And usually it's like more along the lines of music, so
Let's hope for that.
let's hope for that round.
But don't approach Cynthia with your wrestling league ideas or something like that. Just go, stick it to music. Keep to music.
Yeah, because then I'll just be like, challenge accepted. And
No.
it's just going to be a waste of
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
Nobody wants to see that.
I definitely look forward to coming back.
I
This
think
was-
we
this
hit a lot
was
of
a
good shit. And
highly
I think we can get
constructive
into another
conversation.
conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Touching on some of these things.
I feel like there were valuable points that weren't necessarily quite reached in other groups. Because we have a very specific, forward and pressing conversation.
So I think we took that in a couple of really interesting, good directions.
Yeah.
I would love to revisit some of them and then also move forward.
With maybe different people involved too.
Yeah, we could throw in another person.
A Dave Ed Powell and Ed.
Oh my God.
A Carnell. I want Carnell in here.
I'll have to get Carnell because I want to talk to him about.
I told him
Oh,
we're going to make each other famous.
Well, I've heard enough stories over time because I mean, okay, there used to be an old. Well, let's cap this with like an old story. There used to be like an old crew at Cheesecake Anaheim. I feel enough people have left with the management team changed.
Yeah.
That when Al Bianchi left, Jim got there. A whole bunch of old timers, I would say, left because the regime change, situation changes. And so Rock and I arrived right at that time.
Okay.
And because we had a train together. And like there was a group of people that were like a clique. And then I eventually kind of got cool with part of them. She got cool with part of them.
Yeah.
And like Cornell's been like a center of gravity there.
Oh,
you know?
100%. He's one of those rare individuals that just has a gravitational pull.
So his life experience, I'd love to interview on the podcast. That's
he's
what
a
I
bounty
would have
hunter.
him.
He does it all.
That's
so.
what I'd have him on. I'd have him on to see. That's the podcast is determined by the people who enter the room and onto the podcast. So I talked to him about his life.
Yeah, I feel like he
That's
would
the
be
kind
a
of
fascinating
podcast.
human being.
Like I wouldn't bring him on to talk about this subject.
Yeah,
maybe his
dive into him.
Maybe okay. Here's something that I love about human beings. So Garrett drove me home once. We got lit, and we're on the 405. We're bucking it, 22. Sorry, and I had like this 5-minute thing about trash in government. USA's fucked up.
Yeah. Okay.
And we got to make it right. Garrett says the same thing in 20 seconds, but he says it in a different way.
Yes.
Right? Like
it takes a different brain to format it differently.
But we both had a connection ourselves. Because I think not just the we, but like we had already broken the barrier. We were friends that we worked in the shit together, right?
Yeah.
With that cheesecake thing again.
Yeah. That common thread.
Right. And so like we had things that already bridged that gap. And so we were able to kind of just understand, even though we said it differently. We were agreeing.
And I think it has a lot to say for the fact that like there's different, like everybody has their own language. We have our own lexicon. We have our own way of defining the same words.
Yeah.
And we just seem to have more ways of connecting with each other, more reasons to be connecting with each other, and really like
this is a good reason.
Yeah. I mean this. I mean, ideally, this could help us maybe use I'm not saying stop social media. Maybe just use it to be more real. Use it to be more in reality.
Does keep you more real, though.
A slice of life.
I think right now there's a big. It's like people go either way. It goes either way. Usage. Okay. That's what I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of speaking to. That, like I take breaks on purpose. Like I'm gonna stay off this for a while.
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on some other things. I need to read some more. I want to get this done. This will be a great break. I'll finish this, come back.
I do need to
no
read
one's hurt.
more.
I think it's safe. I think some people...
I do need to read more. I had weaned myself off of philosophy because I felt like I was getting a communicative barrier because I was so in my philosophical mindset and not in the, keep it simple mindset. Like the Garrett where he's able to express it in a shorter way. I feel like I was in the academia cloud where
it's
you just
easy
like
to get stuck there.
Yeah.
And on that note, guys, we're gonna go ahead and cut it there. And I won't keep you any longer. So thank you very much for joining us, and come back again. Thank you.